Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, The Silent Fear. Where are you watching from tonight, and what time is it in your country? Have you shared my channel with your friends yet, or are you keeping these whispers all to yourself? Here we explore chilling true crime and eerie mysteries, stories that slip between fact and nightmare. Tonight I have another dark tale for you, the disturbing true crime of three men who vanished into the thin, salty air of the Atlantic, leaving behind nothing but a cold meal and a stopped clock. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that low, unsettling hum, and let's drift into tonight's journey together. You are cold. That is the first thing you notice, not just the chill of the air, but a damp, penetrating cold that seems to have bypassed your wool coat entirely and settled directly into your marrow. You are standing on the deck of the Lighthouse tender Hesperus, a ship that sounds like a poem but smells like diesel and wet dog. The date is December 26th, 1900. Boxing Day. A day usually reserved for leftovers and nursing a hangover, but you aren't doing either. You are staring at a rock. Specifically, you are staring at Eilean Mòr, the largest of the Flannan Isles. Though calling it large is a bit of a joke, the kind of dry humor the ocean loves to play on cartographers. It's a jagged tooth of dark stone jutting out of the Atlantic about 20 miles from the Outer Hebrides off the west coast of Scotland. It looks less like an island and more like the earth is trying to stab the sky. You've been sent here because something is wrong. The light is out. The Lighthouse, a marvel of modern engineering built to withstand the apocalypse, has been dark since December 15th. Ships have reported it. Captains have grumbled about it. And now, you are here to fix it. Or at least, to find out why three grown men trained to do exactly one thing, keep a fire burning, decided to stop doing it. The captain of the Hesperus, a man named Jim Harvey who looks like he was carved out of driftwood, pulls the whistle cord. The ship's horn bellows across the water, a low, mournful sound that vibrates in your chest. You wait. You expect to see figures running down the steep stairs cut into the cliff face. You expect waving arms. You expect a flag to be run up the pole, snapping in the wind. But there is nothing. Just the rock. Just the gray sea churning against the base of the cliffs, foaming like a rabid dog. And the silence. It's strange how loud silence can be when you're expecting noise. Researchers still argue whether the acoustic properties of the Flannan Isles amplify the sound of the wind, or if the isolation just makes your brain manufacture noise to fill the void, but right now, the silence feels heavy. It feels like a physical weight pressing against your eardrums. It's the kind of silence that happens right after a car crash, before the screaming starts. You lower the lifeboat. The winch creaks, a metallic groan that sounds disturbingly human. You climb in with two other men, Joseph Moore, the relief keeper who is anxious to start his shift, and a seaman who looks like he'd rather be anywhere else, possibly even a dentist's chair. Moore is twitchy. He's gripping the gunwales of the boat so hard his knuckles are white, blending in perfectly with the sea spray. He knows the men on that rock. He shared meals with them, played cards with them, probably listened to them snore. He knows that James Ducat, the principal keeper, is a man of strict routine. Ducat wouldn't let the light go out unless he was dead. That's a comforting thought, isn't it? The lifeboat hits the water with a slap. You row toward the east landing. The swell is significant today, rising and falling like the chest of a sleeping giant. The waves here are famous. They travel thousands of miles across the open Atlantic with nothing to hit until they smack into these rocks. By the time they arrive, they are angry. They have momentum. They have an attitude problem. As you get closer, you look up. The lighthouse sits 200 feet above you, a white pillar against a gray sky. It looks abandoned, not just empty, but vacant in a way that suggests it was never really inhabited to begin with. That's a violation of protocol. Keepers are supposed to fly the flag to welcome the relief boat. It's the maritime equivalent of leaving the porch light on. But the pole is bare, a skeletal finger pointing at nothing. Also, looking at the landing, you notice something missing. Usually, there are provision boxes left out on the jetty, empty crates meant to be swapped for full ones. It's the standard grocery delivery system of the 19th century. But the jetty is bare. No boxes, no welcome committee, just whetstone and bird poop. Lots of bird poop. The seabirds are screaming overhead, diving and wheeling, annoyed that you've invaded their personal space. The boat bumps against the concrete steps of the landing. It's a tricky maneuver. You have to time your jump with the swell, leaping from the moving boat onto the slippery stairs before the ocean decides to crush you between the hull and the rock. It's a fun game called Don't Die Before Lunch. You make the jump. Your boots skid on the slime, but you catch your balance. Mòr follows you, landing with the grace of a man who has done this 100 times. The seaman stays in the boat, keeping it off the rocks, looking at you with eyes that say, "Better you than me, pal." You start the climb. The stairs are steep, cut directly into the cliff. There are 160 steps to the top. As you climb, the wind picks up. It grabs at your coat, pushing you, testing your balance. It's a cold wind, carrying the smell of salt and decay. The Flannan Isles are known as the Seven Hunters. A charming name. It implies that if you are prey, you are in the wrong neighborhood. And right now, clinging to the side of a cliff with the ocean boiling below you, you feel very much like prey. There's an old, obscure superstition among the Hebridean sailors about Eilean Mòr. They say you shouldn't call things by their proper names here. You don't say church, you say the big house. You don't say rabbit, you say the long-eared one. It's as if using real names gives the spirits of the island power over you. It sounds like nonsense, the kind of thing old men say to scare tourists and get free drinks, but as you climb these stairs, surrounded by gray water and gray stone, you find yourself carefully not thinking the word death. You just think, absence. Mòr is ahead of you. He's moving fast, driven by panic. He's calling out their names, Ducat, Marshall, MacArthur. His voice is snatched away by the wind the second it leaves his mouth. It's pitiful, really. Shouting at a hurricane is the definition of futility, but he keeps doing it. Thomas, James, Donald. You reach the top of the cliff. The compound is before you. A neat, whitewashed wall surrounds the lighthouse and the keeper's cottages. It looks orderly, civilized, a tiny outpost of British efficiency on the edge of the world. But the silence up here is even worse. It's not just the absence of noise, it's the presence of stillness. Nothing is moving except the wind. No smoke rises from the chimney. That's a bad sign. It's December in Scotland. If there's no fire, there's no life. You walk toward the entrance gate. It's closed. Mòr reaches it first. He tries the latch. It lifts easily. The gate swings open with a rusted squeal that sets your teeth on edge. "It's unlocked," Mòr says, breathless. You nod. "Of course it is. Why lock the gate? Who are you trying to keep out? The seagulls, the Atlantic Ocean, the neighbors who are 20 miles away and possibly fish." You step into the courtyard. The path is clean. The grass is trimmed. Everything looks normal, which makes it terrifying. If there had been a battle, an explosion, a giant squid attack, that you could process. Chaos is understandable. But order. Order implies that whatever happened here was quiet, quick, or perhaps consensual. You approach the door to the cottage. This is where the keepers live when they aren't up in the lantern room cleaning the lens or polishing brass. It's a sturdy building, stone walls 3 feet thick to keep out the weather. You pause at the door. Mòr looks at you. He doesn't want to be the first one to go in. You can see the fear in his eyes, a raw, naked terror that he's trying to hide behind professional concern. He's wondering what's on the other side of that wood. Bodies, blood, or something worse. You take a breath. It tastes like ozone and fear. You reach out and turn the handle. The door is unlocked. It swings inward into the gloom. "Hello?" You call out. Your voice sounds small, flat. The air inside the cottage is stale. It smells of cold ash, damp wool, and something else, something faint and metallic. "Anyone home?" No answer. Just the ticking of a clock on the wall. Tick, tick. It's the only sound in the room, and it's maddeningly rhythmic. It implies that time is still passing, even if the people who were supposed to be watching it are gone. You step inside. Mòr follows, staying close to your shoulder. The kitchen is dim. The shutters are closed. Light filters in through the cracks, painting striped shadows across the floor. You let your eyes adjust. The first thing you notice is the fireplace. The grate is cold. The ashes are gray and lifeless. You crouch down and touch them, stone cold. This fire hasn't burned for days, maybe a week. In a place where heat is survival, a cold hearth is a tombstone. You stand up and look around. The table is set. There are plates, utensils. A meal was in progress, or about to be. There's a pot of mutton on the stove, congealed and waxy. It looks unappetizing, like a science experiment that went wrong in a boring way. They must have left in a hurry, Mòr whispers. Maybe, you say, or maybe they just weren't hungry. It's a bad joke. Mòr doesn't laugh. He's staring at a chair. It's overturned on the floor, lying on its side as if whoever was sitting in it stood up with such violence that they kicked it backward. You walk over to the coat rack by the door. This is important. In the Lighthouse service, gear is life. You count the oilskins. There should be 3 sets of outdoor gear, heavy waterproof coats and trousers that make you look like a walking yellow rubber duck. 1, 2, only 2 sets of oilskins are hanging there. You do the math. 3 keepers, 2 coats. That means one of them, Donald MacArthur, the occasional keeper, went out without his gear. You look at the window. The glass is thick, reinforced. Outside, the wind is howling. Who goes out into a North Atlantic winter storm in their shirt sleeves? A madman, a man fleeing a fire, or a man who saw something so compelling, so terrifying, that he forgot he was mortal. Where are they? Mòr asks. He sounds like a child now. Where did they go? I don't know, you say, but we're going to find out. You move deeper into the cottage. You check the bedrooms. The beds are unmade, sheets rumpled, but not in a struggle kind of way. Just the messy way of men who don't have wives around to tell them to tidy up. You check the pantry. It's fully stocked. Plenty of food. They didn't starve. You check the logbook, lying closed on the desk. We'll get to that later. For now, you just note its position. Closed. Finished. You walk back out into the courtyard. The wind hits you again, harder this time. It feels personal. You look up at the light tower. It stands 75 feet high above the compound, a white cylinder of stone and glass. It is a machine designed to save lives, but right now, it feels like a monument to failure. We need to check the light, you say. Mòr nods. He's the relief keeper. It's his job now. The routine must continue. That's the rule of the sea. Men die, ships sink, but the light must burn. It's the ultimate bureaucratic imperative. You can be eaten by a sea monster, but if you don't fill out Form 12B in triplicate, you're going to be in trouble with the Northern Lighthouse Board. You climb the spiral stairs of the tower, round and round. The stone echoes with your footsteps. The air gets colder the higher you go. You reach the lantern room. The lens is huge, a beautiful, multifaceted jewel of glass and brass. It's the Fresnel lens, capable of throwing a beam for miles. It's covered in a tarp. Everything is clean. The brass is polished. The lamps are trimmed. The oil fountains are full. Everything is ready to be lit. It's just waiting. It's like a stage set for a play where the actors never showed up. You walk out onto the gallery, the metal walkway that circles the top of the tower. The view is staggering. You can see the entire island from here. The green turf, the gray rock, the white foam. It looks small, vulnerable. A speck of dust on the ocean's dinner plate. You look down at the west landing. That's the other side of the island, the side that faces the full force of the Atlantic. From up here, it looks wrong. You can't quite make it out, but the geography seems twisted. We need to check the other landing, you say to Mòr. He doesn't answer. He's staring out at the horizon, searching for a boat, a raft, a bobbing head. Anything. They're gone, he says softly. They're just gone. You don't say anything. You just lean against the cold railing and listen to the wind. It sounds like a voice. A low, murmuring voice telling a joke you don't quite understand yet. Researchers and historians have spent over a century arguing about what happened in these first few moments of discovery. Some say the door was locked from the inside. Some say the clock was stopped at a specific time. Some say there was a half-eaten meal on the table. The details shift like the tides. But the one fact that remains, the one jagged rock of truth in a sea of speculation is this: 3 men were on this island. They were experienced, reliable, and sane. And then, between one breath and the next, they were not. You look down at your hands. They are trembling slightly. It's just the cold, you tell yourself, just the wind. But deep down, in the lizard part of your brain that remembers when we used to be afraid of the dark for very good reasons, you know the truth. You aren't shaking because of the temperature. You're shaking because you can feel it too. The island is watching you. It has swallowed 3 men, and it's still hungry. And you have just walked into its mouth. You descend the spiral stairs, leaving the gallery's biting wind for the heavy, still air of the tower. Your boots clang against the iron steps, a harsh, rhythmic sound that seems to shout your intrusion to the stones themselves. Down you go, spiraling into the belly of the beast. The lighthouse is a machine, yes, but right now it feels more like a tomb. A vertical crypt designed by engineers who loved geometry more than they loved people. When you reach the bottom, you push back into the living quarters. The transition is jarring. You go from the stark, industrial purpose of the light room to the intimate, domestic tragedy of the kitchen. It's like walking from a factory floor directly into someone's bedroom while they're sleeping, or while they're dead. You stand there just inside the doorway and let the room speak to you. Mòr is already there. He's moving aimlessly, touching things. He picks up a tin cup, sets it down. He straightens a towel. He's trying to reset the world. If he can just make the kitchen look normal, maybe the men will pop out from behind the pantry door and say, "Surprise!" Got you good, didn't we, Joseph? But the silence stretches on, thick and suffocating. It's the kind of silence that usually requires a priest to break. Let's talk about that gate again, the one you passed to get here, the one that was shut but unlocked. In a city, an unlocked gate is an invitation. It says, "Come in, steal my lawn gnome." But here, on a rock 20 miles from civilization, an unlocked gate is a statement of confidence, or apathy, or perhaps urgency. You think about the mechanics of it. The iron latch is heavy. It takes a deliberate hand to close it. It takes a deliberate hand to bolt it. Researchers still argue whether the gate being unlocked is significant or just a detail inflated by storytellers. Some say the regulations required it to be closed to keep out the sheep. Yes, there were sheep on the island, the toughest, most miserable mutton in Scotland. But surely, if a storm was raging, you'd lock everything down. You'd batten the hatches. You'd turn the island into a fortress. Unless the danger wasn't outside. Unless the reason you didn't lock the gate was that you ran through it so fast you didn't care if the sheep or the devil himself followed you out. You look back at the kitchen hearth. This is the heart of the home. In 1900, fire isn't just a luxury. It's the center of the universe. It cooks your food, dries your clothes, and keeps the creeping damp from turning your lungs into sponges. You walk over to the grate. You kneel, ignoring the groan of your knees, which are protesting the climb and the cold. You hover your hand over the ash. It's not just cold, it's dead. There isn't a single ember hiding in the gray dust. Do you know how long it takes for a coal fire to go completely cold in a stone house in December? A long time. 12 hours. 24. This isn't a fire that died an hour ago. This is a fire that starved to death days ago. It implies that for at least a week, this room has been sitting here freezing while the calendar pages turned unseen. There is a fascinating, obscure bit of folklore regarding the hearths of the Outer Hebrides. The locals believe that the fire is the soul of the house. If you let it go out, you are inviting the Sla, the host of the unforgiven dead, to come down the chimney. It's a charming thought. Just what you need when you're standing in a room that feels like a walk-in freezer. "It's so cold," Mòr whispers. He's hugging himself, his arms wrapped tight around his chest. He looks smaller than he did on the boat. The lighthouse is shrinking him. "We need to search the rest of the quarters," you say, trying to sound authoritative. You sound like a substitute teacher who has lost control of the class. You move to the sleeping areas. It feels wrong, invading their privacy like this. These are men's sanctuaries. You see the personal detritus of 3 lives interrupted. A pipe left on a bedside table, the tobacco pouch open, dried flakes scattered like brown confetti. A pair of reading glasses folded neatly. A Bible. You pick up the Bible. It falls open to the book of Job. Of course it does. Because if God is going to mess with you, He's going to do it with a sense of literary irony. The beds are unmade, not torn apart, just slept in. The indentations of heads are still visible on the pillows. It's intimate and horrifying. It suggests they woke up, started their day, and then the day just ended. There's a smell here too. Can you smell it? It's faint, under the scent of salt and coal. It's the smell of unwashed wool and men. The specific savory funk of a bachelor pad that hasn't been aired out. It's the smell of life, and that's what makes it so awful. The smell is still here, but the source is gone. It's like a ghost in reverse, the haunting remains of the physical, while the spirit has fled. And then there's the clock. You go back to the main room. On the mantelpiece, above the dead fire, sits a clock. It's a standard-issue timepiece, reliable, boring. The kind of clock that ticks away the seconds of your life without judgment. But it's not ticking now. The hands are frozen. Some accounts say it stopped at midnight. Others say 2000 a.m. But does it matter? The point is, it stopped. It ran down. A clock like this needs to be wound every few days. It's part of the routine. Wake up, wind the clock, trim the wick, don't die. Simple. For the clock to stop, the routine had to break. The heartbeat of the house had to fail. Why didn't they wind it? Mòr asks, staring at the face of the clock as if it might explain itself. Maybe they forgot, you say. Ducat never forgot, Mòr snaps. He was precise. He treated this station like a church. Maybe he got distracted, you offer. Distracted by what? Mòr challenges. There's nothing out here but birds and water. He has a point. It takes a lot to distract a man whose only job is to watch a light and wind a spring. It would take something catastrophic, or something mesmerizing. You look around the room again, trying to see it through the eyes of a detective or perhaps an archaeologist. You are looking for signs of a struggle, a chair used as a weapon, a blood stain scrubbed clean, a note scrawled in lipstick on the mirror. Unlikely given the demographic, but you never know. But there is nothing. The order is the most violent thing about it. It's an aggressive normality. Researchers often debate the state of the kitchen. Was the chair really overturned? The initial report by Mòr said yes, but later investigations suggested it might have been knocked over by Mòr himself in his panic, or perhaps he just remembered it that way because chaos fits the narrative better than calm. Memory is a tricky thing. It edits the film in real time. Maybe the chair was upright, and your brain just pushed it over because it needed a reason to be afraid. You walk over to the pantry. You open the door. Canned meat. Pickles. Biscuits that could double as masonry bricks. Enough food to last for months. They didn't starve, you mutter. No, Mòr agrees, and they didn't pack. He gestures to the corner. A sea chest sits there, heavy and undisturbed. If they were leaving, if they had been rescued or kidnapped or decided to start a new life as pirates, they would have taken their things. A sailor doesn't leave his kit. His kit is his soul. It's his dry socks, his photos of his sweetheart, his hidden flask of rum. To leave it behind is to admit you aren't coming back. There is a joke among lighthouse keepers. The only way to leave the rock early is in a box or a straitjacket. Right now, you're wondering which one applied, or if they invented a third option, simply ceasing to exist. You feel a draft. The wind is finding its way through the stone. It whistles through a crack in the window frame, a high, thin sound. Whee! It sounds like a flute played by someone with no lips. You shiver. You can't help it. The cold is inside you now. You are part of the house. You are part of the mystery. We should look at the logbook, Mòr says. His voice is steady. He wants data. He wants written words. He wants to see Ducat's handwriting, because handwriting proves a man existed. Yes, you say, the logbook. You look at the desk in the corner. It's a heavy oak piece, scarred by years of use. The logbook sits there, a black ledger that contains the official history of the light. It is closed. You approach it slowly. You feel a strange hesitation. You want to open it, and you absolutely do not want to open it. It's Schrodinger's logbook. As long as it's closed, the men might just be on a very long walk, but once you open it, the ink will lock the truth in place. But that's for the next moment. For now, you just stand in the freezing kitchen, listening to the wind try to get in and the silence try to get out. You look at the unlocked gate through the window. You look at the cold ash. You look at the stopped clock. And you realize that the scariest thing isn't what's in this room. It's what's missing. The life. The heat. The time. The men. You turn your back on the cold hearth, but you can still feel it behind you. A black hole sucking the warmth out of the world. And you know with a certainty that makes your stomach turn over, that whatever happened here didn't happen because of a lack of preparation. It didn't happen because of a rusty lock. It happened because something decided that locks didn't matter. The logbook sits on the desk like a judge's verdict waiting to be read. It's just a book bound in black cloth, standard issue from the Northern Lighthouse Board. But in the dim light of the cottage, it looks like an artifact. You can almost feel the weight of it before you even touch it. The paper inside holds the last thoughts of James Ducat. It holds the timeline of the end. Mòr stands behind you, breathing shallowly. He's the relief keeper, the man who was supposed to be here days ago if the weather hadn't held you back. He feels guilty. You can smell it on him, sharper than the sea salt. It's the survivor's guilt of a man who missed a train that later derailed. If he had been here, would he be gone too, or would he have been the anchor that kept them all sane? Open it, Mòr whispers. You reach out, your fingers brush the cover. It's cold, of course. Everything here is cold. You open the book. The spine cracks. The sound is like a pistol shot in the silence. You flip through the pages. September, October, November. Just routine. Oil consumption, weather reports, barometric pressure. It's boring. It's beautiful. It's the steady, rhythmic heartbeat of men doing a job that requires zero imagination. And then you reach December. The entries for the first week are normal. Light fired at sunset, cleaned lens, wind, westerly, force, 4. It's the literary equivalent of watching paint dry. But then, on December 12th, the handwriting changes. It's still Ducat's hand, but it's tighter, pressed harder into the paper. December 12th. Gale north by northwest. Sea lashed to fury. Never seen such a storm. You frown. You look up at the window. You look at Mòr. December 12th, you ask. Mòr nods. That was 4 days ago. Was there a storm? Mòr shakes his head. No. The Hesperus was in Lewis. The weather was calm. A bit of a breeze maybe, but nothing like a gale. You look back at the page. Sea lashed to fury. This is a problem. The Flannan Isles are 20 miles from the Isle of Lewis. Weather systems are big. You don't get a hurricane on one rock and a picnic on the next. It's like reading a diary where someone complains about a blizzard while sitting on a beach in nothing but a Speedo. The disparity is jarring. It suggests that the storm Ducat was writing about wasn't atmospheric. It was something else. You read on. December 12, 12 p.m. Storm still raging. Wind steady. Cannot go out. Ship passing sounding foghorn. Could see lights of cabins. Ducat. Irritable. Irritable, you murmur. It's a mild word for a man trapped in a stone tube during an imaginary hurricane. But then comes the next line. The line that makes the hair on your arms stand up despite the layers of wool. Marshall cried. You stop. You stare at the words. Thomas Marshall. A man you know by reputation. Marshall is a brute of a man, a seasoned sailor who has spent his life on the water. He's the kind of guy who would punch a shark in the nose if it looked at him wrong. He doesn't cry. He drinks whiskey, he fights, he laughs at danger. Marshall cried. Mòr reads over your shoulder. His voice cracks. That's impossible. I've seen Thomas break his arm and not shed a tear. He just swore and wrapped it in a rag. It says he cried, you say. Why would a man like Marshall cry because of a storm? Keepers are used to storms. They live for them. The lighthouse is built to take a beating. The walls are thick, the glass is reinforced. A storm is just loud television to these men. Unless this storm was different, unless the wind sounded like something he knew, researchers still argue whether these logbook entries are genuine. Some claim they were forged later by the investigation team to add drama to a bureaucratic failure. Others say they are real but misinterpreted. But standing here, reading the ink that looks so fresh it could be wet, you don't feel like you're looking at a forgery. You feel like you're looking at a confession. You turn the page. December 13th. Storm continued through night. Wind shifting west by north. Ducat quiet. MacArthur praying. You let out a short, sharp laugh. It's involuntary. Praying, you say. MacArthur. Donald MacArthur is the occasional keeper. He's a local man from the islands. A hard man. A brawler. The kind of man who thinks church is a place you go to get married or buried and nowhere in between. When a Scotsman starts praying instead of swearing, you say to Mòr, you know the situation is grim. It's basically an admission of defeat. Mòr doesn't laugh. Why were they praying? If the tower is solid, why pray? Maybe they weren't praying for the tower to hold, you say softly. Maybe they were praying for whatever was outside to go away. There is a fringe theory, whispered in the darker corners of maritime forums, about infrasound. The ocean, when it hits certain frequencies against hollow rocks, can create low-frequency vibrations, sound waves below the range of human hearing. These waves, called microbaroms, can pass through walls. They can vibrate your eyeballs, causing hallucinations. They can vibrate your chest, causing intense feelings of dread and sorrow. It's the voice of the sea. Maybe the storm wasn't wind and rain. Maybe the storm was a sonic weapon generated by the geology of the island itself, vibrating their brains until Marshall wept and MacArthur bargained with God. Or maybe it was the blue men of the Mitch. You know the legend. They are the fallen angels of the sea, blue-skinned spirits who challenge captains to rhyming contests. If the captain wins, the ship passes. If he loses, the blue men drag the ship down. It's a ridiculous story. But right now, with the wind whistling that high, thin note through the window, you wonder if Ducat lost the rhyme. You look at the entry for December 14th. December 14, 5 p.m. Storm decreasing, sea calm. God is over all. That's it. The last entry. God is over all, Mòr repeats. That sounds final. It sounds like acceptance or madness. It's the kind of thing a man writes when he has looked into the abyss and the abyss has blinked. But look at the date, you say, pointing. December 14th. The storm decreased. The sea was calm. So they survived the storm, Mòr says, hopeful. Whatever it was, it passed. Yes, you say, but they disappeared on the 15th. The logbook ends there. There is no entry for the 15th. But the slate, the temporary chalkboard where keepers note the day's work before transferring it to the log, was found with the morning observations for the 15th written on it. Barometer reading. Temperature. Wind direction. They survived the imaginary storm that made Marshall cry and MacArthur pray. They came out the other side. They woke up on the morning of the 15th, they did their chores, they ate their mutton, and then, around noon, they vanished. It's the timing that gets you. It's the narrative arc. If they had been swept away during the fury of the 12th or 13th, it would make sense. A tragedy, but a logical one. But to survive the terror, to come out into the calm and then disappear, that feels cruel. It feels like a cat playing with a mouse, letting it go just to catch it again. You close the book. The sound of the cover hitting the pages is softer this time. Less of a gunshot, more of a period at the end of a sentence. They were afraid, you say. 3 grown men, tough men. They were terrified of something that the rest of the world couldn't even see. We have to check the West Landing, Mòr says again. He's obsessed with the landing. He needs physical evidence. He needs to see broken ropes and twisted iron. He needs the ocean to be the killer because the ocean is a killer he understands. He can't fight a ghost. He can't fight a frequency. But he can hate the sea. Yes, you say. Let's go to the landing. You turn to leave the cottage, but you pause at the door. You look back at the logbook one last time. It sits there on the desk, black and silent. It contains the only testimony you will ever get, and it's a testimony of madness. You step out into the wind. It hits you instantly, stripping the warmth from your face. But this time, the wind feels different. Before, it was just weather. Now, after reading those pages, it feels sentient. It feels like it's trying to tell you something. Marshall cried. You button your coat. You pull your hat down low. You are going to the cliffs. You are going to the edge of the world to see what broke the iron railings. But part of you, the part that is now vibrating with a low, thrumming dread, suspects that the railings weren't broken by water. They were broken by whatever made a godless man pray. And, as you walk toward the precipice, you realize the scariest joke of all. The weather forecast for December 15th, 1900 was fair and clear. Perfect weather for a disappearance. The kind of day where you can see for miles, and yet see absolutely nothing at all. But before you commit to the cliffs, before you force your body back into the gale that is trying to peel you off the planet, something pulls you back. A thought. A nagging incongruity that itches at the back of your brain like a tag on a new shirt. You stop in the doorway. Mòr is already a few steps ahead, his boots crunching on the gravel, but he pauses when he realizes you aren't following. He turns, his face pale and pinched in the gray light. What is it? He shouts over the wind. The kitchen, you say. You don't shout it. You don't have to. The wind seems to carry the words back into the house, swirling them around the room you just left. You turn around and step back inside. The silence of the cottage rushes to meet you, wrapping around you like a heavy, velvet blanket. It's quieter in here than it should be. The ticking clock is still dead. The fire is still dead. But it's the table that holds your attention. You walk over to it. You stare down at the meal. There is something profoundly unsettling about abandoned food. It's one of those universal human triggers, like seeing a shoe on the side of the highway. It implies an interruption so severe that basic biological needs were suspended. When you see a half-eaten sandwich, you don't think, oh, they must have gotten full. You think, what happened? You look at the mutton. It's congealed now, a grayish lump of protein sitting in a pool of solidified white fat. It looks like a geological formation. Cold mutton is widely regarded as one of the saddest substances on earth, a culinary tragedy even when it's fresh. But like this, it's almost offensive. It's a violation of the pact between the cook and the eater. They didn't touch it, you whisper. Mòr comes back to the doorway, hovering on the threshold like a vampire waiting for an invite. He doesn't want to come back in. He hates this room now. Maybe they ate earlier, Mòr suggests weakly. No, you say, pointing to the plates. Clean. The cutlery is aligned. They set the table, they dished out the food, and then... Then what? Then they left. Researchers still argue whether the meal was prepared for dinner or for lunch. It seems like a trivial detail, a pedantic squabble for historians with too much time on their hands. But in a timeline of disappearance, hours matter. If it was lunch, they vanished in daylight. If it was dinner, they vanished in the dark. And looking at the heavy, hearty nature of the spread-boiled mutton, potatoes, pickles, it feels like a midday meal, a meal to fuel a man for an afternoon of hard labor. But there is a famous parallel here, isn't there? You can't look at a table of undisturbed food on a maritime vessel or outpost without thinking of the Mary Celeste. The ghost ship found drifting in the Atlantic in 1872, famously discovered with breakfast still on the table, tea still warm in the cups. That detail about the warm tea was actually a myth, invented by Arthur Conan Doyle. Yes, Sherlock Holmes's dad was a bit of a liar when it came to fiction, but the image stuck. It stuck because it's terrifying. It suggests that the boundary between safety and oblivion is thinner than a piece of china. Here, the food isn't warm, it's frozen in time. It's a museum exhibit titled The Last Supper of the Flannan Isles. You pick up a fork. It's heavy, silver-plated. Government issue. You turn it over in your hand. It's cold metal. You imagine Ducat holding this fork. You imagine him lifting it, perhaps making a joke about the quality of the meat. I think this sheep died of old age, lads. And then stopping, fork mid-air, eyes widening. What sound did he hear? Was it the wind changing pitch? Was it a knock at the door? Now there's a thought to keep you awake, a knock at the door of a lighthouse 20 miles out to sea. Who's there? The ocean? Or was it silence? Did the storm that was raging in the logbook suddenly stop? Did the fury vanish? replaced by a vacuum so complete that it sucked them out of their chairs. You look at the overturned chair again. We talked about it before, but really look at it. It's lying on its side, legs pointing accusingly at the door. It's the only disorderly thing in the room. It looks like he jumped up, Mòr says, stepping closer, like he was startled. Or dragged, you say. Mòr flinches. Don't say that. If he jumped up, you continue, he would have had time to grab his coat. But remember the oilskins. 1 set missing, 2 sets here. That means 1 man. MacArthur was already in his gear. He was ready. But Ducat and Marshall, they were in their indoor clothes. They were about to eat. So MacArthur came in. Mòr traces the line of logic. He came in and said something. Or he didn't come in, you say. Maybe he shouted from the door. Maybe he screamed. There is an obscure piece of Celtic folklore about the Torad. It's a concept found in the Hebrides in Ireland regarding food left out for the good people, the fairies or the spirits of the dead. The belief is that the spirits don't physically eat the food. They consume the Torad, the essence or substance of the meal, leaving the physical food behind as a tasteless, empty husk. If a living person were to eat food that had its Torad taken, they would wither away and die. You look at the mutton again. It looks drained. It looks like wax fruit. It looks like something that has been fed upon by entities that don't have teeth but have a very specific kind of hunger. I'm not hungry, Mòr says suddenly. He looks green. Me neither, you say. And it's true. The sight of the food has killed your appetite, which is saying something considering you haven't eaten since breakfast on the ship. But this isn't just nausea, it's a primal rejection. Your body knows that this food is cursed. It belongs to the house now. It belongs to the timeline that ended on December 15th. To take a bite would be to invite yourself into that timeline. It's just waste, Mòr mutters, offended by the practicality of it. Good meat gone to waste. Maybe they left a tip, you say. A very large tip. It's another bad joke. The lighthouse is full of them, but the humor is the only thing keeping the panic at bay. If you don't laugh at the cold mutton, you have to scream at the empty chairs. You walk around the table. You check the plates. No bite marks, no crumbs. They sat down and then they left. It is the ultimate dine and dash, except they paid with their lives. But there is one more detail here, something subtle. You notice a pipe resting on the edge of the table near the 3rd setting. It's filled with tobacco, burnt tobacco. You pick it up. The bowl is cold, but the ash inside is white. That means it was smoked down. It was finished. Who smoked? You ask Mòr? Ducat didn't, Mòr says. Marshall chewed. MacArthur smoked. So MacArthur was here, you say. He sat here. He finished his pipe. He tapped it out. But his oilskins are gone, Mòr argues. If he was here smoking, he would have taken his coat off. You don't smoke a pipe in a rubber suit inside a hot kitchen. Unless he was just leaving, you say. Or just arriving, or... You trail off. The timeline is fracturing. If MacArthur's coat is gone, he should be outside. If his pipe is here, finished, he should be inside, unless he smoked it before he went out. But then, why leave it on the table set for a meal he never ate? It's a continuity error. It's a glitch in the matrix of the crime scene. It suggests that the events didn't happen in a linear A to B sequence. It suggests a chaotic, fragmented few minutes where men were doing irrational things, smoking while panicking, setting the table while the world ended. The clock, you say, turning back to the mantel. When did it stop? We don't know, Mòr says. It just ran down. If they vanished on the 15th, you calculate, and the clock runs for 48 hours. It stopped on the 17th, 2 days after they left. For 2 days, this room was empty, the fire dying, the food rotting, and the clock ticking. Tick, tick. Can you imagine that sound? The only sound in a 20-mile radius of ocean, a mechanical heart beating in a dead body. And then... silence. The moment the spring unwound. The moment the house officially died. We have to go, you say abruptly. The kitchen feels suddenly suffocating. The smell of the cold meat is cloying, sticking to the back of your throat. It smells like a butcher shop that lost power. Yes, Mòr agrees. The West Landing. You turn your back on the table. You leave the mutton to the ghosts. You leave the overturned chair where it lies, a monument to the moment gravity won. As you step back out into the courtyard, the wind hits you with renewed violence. It feels cleaner out here. Colder, yes, and deadlier, but cleaner. The kitchen was stagnant. It was a pool of trapped time. Out here, the chaos is fresh. You look at the oilskin rack one last time as you pass the door. 2 coats, 1 missing. The math still doesn't work. If the weather was fine on the 15th, as the logbook slate indicated, why did MacArthur wear his gear? And why did the others go out without theirs? You don't wear heavy oilskins for a stroll in the sunshine. You wear them for battle. You wear them when you expect to get wet. So, MacArthur knew. He knew something was coming. Maybe he saw it from the window. Maybe he felt it in his knees, the way old sailors feel a drop in pressure. He put on his coat. He grabbed his pipe. He waited. And when the others sat down to eat, ignoring the signs, ignoring the dread, that's when the door opened. You shudder. Not from the cold, from the image of that door opening and what might have been standing there. "Come on," Mòr shouts. He's already halfway to the gate. He wants to see the damage. He wants to see twisted iron. You follow him. You leave the unlocked gate behind you. You leave the cold hearth. You leave the meal that has lost its soul. You are heading for the West Landing. You are heading for the place where the island meets the Atlantic in a violent collision of stone and water. You are going to see the evidence of the giant wave that everyone wants to believe in. But as you walk, you can't get the taste of invisible grease out of your mouth. And you can't help but wonder if the spirits ate the essence of the food. Are they still hungry? You step away from the cottage, and the wind immediately takes the opportunity to punch you in the face. It's not just a breeze, it's a physical assault. The air here feels like it has teeth. You button your coat up to your chin, burying your face in the wool, but it doesn't help. The cold finds you. It finds the gaps in your scarf, the seam of your collar. It's looking for warmth to steal. And as you walk, hunched against the gale, your mind keeps circling back to that rack in the hallway, the arithmetic of survival that didn't add up. 2 coats, 1 missing. Let's really break down what that means. We aren't talking about forgetting your umbrella when you run to the bodega. We are talking about the North Atlantic in winter. The temperature of the water is about 45 degrees Fahrenheit. The air is freezing. The wind chill brings it down well below zero. In these conditions, going outside without your oilskins isn't just uncomfortable, it's lethal. You look at Mòr, trudging ahead of you. He's wearing his full kit-heavy canvas coat, waterproof trousers, sou'wester hat. He looks like a walking fortress. Even with all that gear, he's shivering. You can see his shoulders shaking. Now imagine James Ducat and Thomas Marshall running out into this. They were wearing indoor clothes. Wool trousers maybe, a flannel shirt, maybe a knitted sweater if they were lucky. But as soon as the spray hits them, and on the West Landing, the spray hits everything, that wool becomes a sponge. It gets heavy. It gets freezing. Medical science tells us that in these conditions, hypothermia sets in within minutes. Your body shunts blood away from your extremities to protect your core. Your hands go numb, your coordination vanishes, you become clumsy, you stumble. And on a cliff edge that is slick with algae and bird slime, stumbling is a death sentence. They wouldn't have done it, you shout to Mòr. The wind tears the words away, but he hears you. He stops and turns, his face framed by the yellow hood. "What?" he yells back. "Ducat," you shout. You shout. He wouldn't have gone out without his skins. It's against regulations. This is the mainstream fact that haunts every investigation into the Flannan Isles. The Northern Lighthouse Board had a rule book thick enough to kill a rat with. And rule number 1 was, no keeper is to leave the lighthouse without proper gear. Rule number 2, no keeper is to leave the lighthouse unattended. By running out in their shirt sleeves, Ducat and Marshall broke both rules. They left the light. They left their protection. They risked the entire station. Why? Maybe he didn't have time. Mòr yells. Maybe it was an emergency. It takes 30 seconds to put on a coat. You scream back. 30 seconds. Count it in your head. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. What kind of emergency is so immediate, so catastrophic, that you can't spare 30 seconds to save your own life? Was one of them drowning? Did MacArthur fall? Let's play that scene. MacArthur is down at the landing. A rogue wave hits. He's swept in. He screams. Ducat and Marshall hear him through the stone walls, through the storm windows, over the roar of the ocean. Unlikely. But let's say they did. They hear a scream. Do they panic? Do they rush out like heroes in a bad novel? Maybe. But these are professional sailors. They know that if you jump into the water to save a drowning man without a rope or a life ring, you just become the second drowning man. It's known as aquatic suicide pact. You don't help. You just add to the body count. Researchers still argue whether the crane theory holds water. The theory is that the crane on the West Landing used for hauling up supplies was damaged or loose. If a heavy iron crane was swinging wild in the wind, threatening to smash the landing, maybe the men rushed out to secure it. But would you rush out to save a piece of metal in your shirt sleeves? Would you die for a crane? It doesn't make sense, Mòr shouts, echoing your thoughts. He looks angry now, angry at his friends for being stupid, angry at the mystery for being illogical. You keep walking. The ground here is treacherous. The grass is short, slick, and rabbit-bitten. It slopes downward toward the cliffs. One wrong step and you're sliding. As you walk, you think about the third man. Not the movie, but the phenomenon. Mountaineers and explorers often report a sensing a presence, a third man walking beside them in moments of extreme stress. It's a hallucination born of hypoxia and exhaustion. But here, on the flat turf of Eilean Mòr, you feel it too. You feel like there is someone walking just behind your left shoulder. You turn around. Nothing but the gray sky and the white tower. There is a terrifyingly obscure superstition in the Hebrides about the Gaoth, the wind. They say the wind has a memory. If you listen closely, it doesn't just howl, it mimics. It repeats the last sounds it heard before it killed someone. You stop. You listen. Woo. Is that a moan? Or is it a name? The Womas. Stop it, you whisper to yourself. You are losing it. The island is getting to you. But the thought persists. What if the emergency wasn't physical? What if Ducat and Marshall didn't run out to save MacArthur? What if they ran out because of MacArthur? Picture the kitchen again. MacArthur is there. He's in his oilskins. He's smoking his pipe. He looks out the window. He sees something. Not a wave, not a broken crane. He sees something that makes him drop his pipe. He backs away. He opens the door. And then he's gone. Snatched. And Ducat and Marshall. They don't run out to help him. They run out because it is coming into the house. Don't be ridiculous, you mutter. You are a man of science. You are here to fix a lamp. You are not here to hunt ghosts. But the cold is making it hard to think rationally. It's slowing your synapses. You stumble over a tussock of grass. Mòr reaches out and grabs your arm, steadying you. Careful, he says. The edges are unstable. The turf overhangs the cliff. You step on the edge, you go down. Thanks, you say. You look at Mòr's grip on your arm. His glove is thick, leather-palmed. It's a barrier. It reminds you again of the skin, the oilskin. There is a joke they tell in the service. Why do lighthouse keepers wear yellow? So the sharks can find them in the dark. It's dark humor, but it touches on a truth. The gear is about visibility. It's about survival. By leaving it behind, Ducat and Marshall rendered themselves invisible. They blended into the gray rock and the gray sea. They erased themselves. Maybe they were fined, you say suddenly. The wind is making you delirious. What? Mòr looks at you like you've cracked. The board, you say, trying to force a laugh. Maybe they realized they were going to be fined for letting the light go out, so they just decided to walk into the sea to save the paperwork. Mòr doesn't smile. Ducat worried about fines, he admits. He was terrified of a black mark on his record. See, you say. Bureaucracy kills more people than the ocean does. It's a weak attempt at levity, but it grounds you. It reminds you that these men were employees. They worried about wages, pensions, inspections. They were mundane. They weren't mythic heroes battling Leviathan. They were guys named Jim and Tom who probably argued about whose turn it was to do the dishes, and that makes their end so much worse. Because mundane men don't just vanish. Mundane men die in bed or in accidents that leave bodies. They don't evaporate. You are nearing the edge now. The roar of the ocean is deafening. You can feel the vibration of the waves hitting the cliff through the soles of your boots. We're almost there, Mòr yells. The West Landing is just over this rise. You brace yourself. You are about to see the scene of the crime. You are about to see if the physical evidence matches the psychological horror. But before you crest the hill, you have one last thought about the coats. There is a condition called paradoxical undressing. In the final stages of severe hypothermia, as the brain fails, the victim starts to feel incredibly hot. They tear off their clothes. They strip naked in the snow. What if the men didn't leave without their coats? What if they left with them but took them off outside? No, that doesn't make sense. The coats were on the rack. They never put them on. So the paradox is different. The paradox is that they chose the cold. They chose the wind. They chose the certainty of exposure over the uncertainty of whatever was inside the lighthouse. You look back at the tower one last time. It stands white and silent against the storm. From here, it looks like a giant unblinking eye. And for a second, just a split second, you think you see a face in the lantern room, a dark shape pressing against the glass. You blink. It's gone. Just a trick of the light. Just a smudge on the lens. "Let's go," you say to Mòr. "Let's see what the sea did." You crest the hill, and the West Landing lies before you, or at least what's left of it. You stand at the top of the jagged ravine known as Geo and IR the West Landing. From this height, you are looking down into a cauldron. The sea here isn't just water. It's a living, heaving muscle of gray and white. It slams into the narrow inlet with a sound like a cannon shot, sending plumes of spray shooting up past your face, wetting your lips with salt that tastes disturbingly like blood. This is where the story stops being a ghost story and starts being a disaster movie. You follow Mòr down the steep concrete steps. They are slick with green slime, slippery as ice. You grip the handrail. It's cold iron, wet and unyielding. But as you descend, you notice something. The rail isn't straight. At about 11-10 feet above sea level, the iron railing solid bars set into the rock with lead is twisted, not just bent, twisted. It looks like a giant hand reached up from the water, grabbed the metal, and squeezed it like a pipe cleaner. "Look at this," Mòr shouts, pointing. You stare at it. Your brain tries to process the physics involved. To bend iron like this requires force, massive force. The kind of force usually associated with train wrecks or industrial accidents. But here, the only force available is water. The sea did this. You yell back. "It must have," Mòr says. He sounds unsure. He's a sailor. He knows the sea is strong, but this is vindictive. You keep going down. The destruction gets worse. There's a concrete platform at the landing, built to receive supplies. It sits 88 feet above the water. A safe height. A height where you can unload boxes without getting your feet wet. But the concrete is torn up. Huge chunks of masonry have been ripped from their foundations and tossed aside like Lego bricks. And then you see the stone. There is a massive block of stone, part of the cliff face, that has been dislodged. It's sitting in the wrong place, resting on the concrete path. "How big is that?" you ask. Mòr kicks it. It doesn't move. A ton, he estimates, maybe more. A 1-ton rock. Moved, at 88 feet above sea level. Let's pause and appreciate the math here. For a wave to move a 1-ton rock at that elevation, it doesn't just need to be a big wave. It needs to be a monster. We are talking about hydraulic pressure in the range of 6,000 pounds per square foot. It's the kind of power that makes you realize your insurance policy probably has a very specific exclusion clause for acts of God who are angry. Researchers still argue whether a wave of that magnitude is even possible in the North Atlantic without a hurricane. The logbook mentioned a fury, yes, but remember the calm on the 14th. If this damage happened on the 15th, the day they vanished, then a wave of biblical proportions hit this rock on a day when the weather was supposedly fine. It suggests a rogue wave. A freak event. A wall of water 100 feet high that appears out of nowhere, destroys everything in its path, and then vanishes, leaving the sea looking innocent and smooth. It's the ocean's way of committing the perfect murder. "The box," Mòr says suddenly. "Where is the box?" "What box?" "The supply box." "The supply box." It was bolted here. He points to a jagged hole in the stone. It held the ropes and the landing tackle. You look at the hole. The bolts are sheared off. The box, a heavy wooden crate reinforced with iron straps, is gone. Not smashed, just erased. "And the life buoy," Mòr adds, looking around frantically. There was a life buoy on the railing. It's gone too. A life buoy gone. Ropes gone. A crane handle bent. The scene paints a chaotic picture. It looks like a battle took place here. A battle between 3 men and a liquid leviathan. They were here, you say. It's not a question. They must have been, Mòr agrees. MacArthur in his coat, Ducat and Marshall in their shirts. Why, you ask? Why come down here in a storm? To secure the box, Mòr suggests. Maybe they saw the waves getting high. Maybe they thought the box was going to be washed away, so they came down to move it. In their shirt sleeves. You counter, to save a box of ropes. Ducat was a stickler for rules, but he wasn't suicidal. You don't trade 3 lives for a coil of hemp. This is the central paradox of the West Landing. The damage proves the violence of the sea. It proves that something catastrophic happened here, but it doesn't explain why the men were in it, unless. There is a fringe theory involving the geode, the inlet itself. Some say that the shape of the ravine acts as a funnel. When the wind hits it from the west, it compresses the air. It creates a vacuum. It can literally suck things off the cliff. Or perhaps it wasn't the wind. Perhaps it was what lives in the geode. The locals call this place the noisy place. But there is an older name for the inlet, rarely used. Sloch na Baist, the gully of the beast. You look over the edge, into the foaming water. It's churning, white and green. It looks like a washing machine full of broken glass. If they were down here, you say, shouting to be heard over the roar, and a wave like that hit. You don't finish the sentence. You don't have to. If a wave could bend iron and move a ton of rock, what would it do to a human body? It wouldn't just drown them. It would pulp them. It would grind them against the granite until there was nothing left but a red smear in the foam. Nature's way of saying, I hate your fence, you mutter. It's a defense mechanism. If you joke about the twisted iron, you don't have to think about the twisted limbs. What? Mòr yells. Nothing, you say. You look back up the cliff. 110 feet. That's the height of an 11-story building. Imagine standing on the roof of an 11-story building and getting hit by a wave. It breaks your brain. It defies your understanding of how the world works. We are land creatures. We think height equals safety. But here, the ocean doesn't care about your altitude. The ocean considers gravity a suggestion, not a law. MacArthur was down here, you say, piecing it together. He was the one in the coat. He came down first. To check the damage, Mòr asks. Maybe. Or maybe he saw it coming. Imagine MacArthur standing where you are standing now. He looks out. He sees a mountain of water rising from the horizon. From the horizon, it blocks out the sky. It blocks out the light. He turns to run. He scrambles up the slippery steps. He screams. And up at the house, Ducat and Marshall hear him. They run out. They don't stop for coats. They just run. They reach the edge of the cliff just as the wave hits. And then, silence. The wave recedes. The water drains back into the Atlantic. And the landing is empty. The box is gone. The men are gone. Only the twisted iron remains, a metal sculpture dedicated to the concept of overkill. We won't find them, Mòr says. His voice is flat. He knows it now. He's looking at the water, and he knows that the Atlantic doesn't give back what it takes. It's a hoarder's paradise down there. No, you say. We won't. You turn away from the edge. The spray has soaked your coat. You are shivering uncontrollably now. The cold has moved from your marrow to your soul. As you climb back up the shattered steps, you pass a crevice in the rock. Stuck deep inside it, wedged tight by the force of the water, is a small object. You stop. You pry it out. It's a univalve, a small sea creature, a shellfish. But it's not native to the surface waters. It's a deep sea variety. The kind that lives on the ocean floor, hundreds of feet down. You hold it in your palm. A tiny messenger from the abyss, delivered by a wave that turned the world upside down. What is that? Mòr asks. Evidence, you say. Evidence that the bottom of the ocean came up to visit the top of the island. You drop the shell into your pocket. It feels heavy. Heavier than the rock. You reach the top of the cliff. The wind is still howling, but the compound looks peaceful in comparison to the violence below. The lighthouse stands tall, white, and pristine. It looks innocent. It looks like it didn't see a thing. But you know better. The lighthouse saw it all. The glass eye watched them die. "They didn't stand a chance," you whisper. "No," Mòr says, "not against that." You walk back toward the gate, the unlocked gate. You are leaving the scene of the execution. But as you walk, you realize that the West Landing wasn't just a murder weapon. It was a message. The message is simple. You build your towers, you light your lamps, you make your schedules. But in the end, you are just soft, warm meat living on a hard, cold rock. And the rock always wins. You walk back from the edge of the abyss, the wind shoving you toward the cottages as if the island itself is tired of your company. Mòr is silent. He's staring at the ground, placing each boot carefully on the turf, as if he expects the earth to open up and swallow him whole. Can you blame him? He's just seen iron twisted like licorice. He's realized that the solid ground beneath his feet is just a temporary arrangement between the magma and the tide. You pass through the gate again, that damned unlocked gate, and the wind drops instantly. The silence of the courtyard returns. It's heavier now. Before, it was just an absence of noise. Now, it feels like a presence. It feels like the silence of a held breath. You step back into the cottage. The warmth is faint, lingering like a memory, but it's better than the biting cold outside. You close the door. You lock it. You slide the bolt home with a clang that echoes too loudly in the small space. Mòr looks at you. Why did you do that? Habit, you say. But it's not habit, it's fear. You've seen what's outside. Now you have to deal with what's inside. Because let's be honest, the ocean is scary, yes. Giant waves are terrifying. But do you know what's scarier? Three men trapped in a stone tube for months on end. No women, no alcohol, no escape. Just the wind, the work, and each other. You look around the kitchen. It's a small space. Intimate. Too intimate. Imagine sharing this room with two other people. You eat together. You sleep within snoring distance of each other. You know exactly how James Ducat chews his mutton. You know the exact pitch of Thomas Marshall's laugh. You know that Donald MacArthur hums when he cleans his pipe, a low, tuneless drone that probably sounds like a drill boring into your skull after the fourth week. There is a psychological term for this, expeditionary psychosis, or, more commonly, cabin fever. It's the slow, grinding erosion of social niceties. It's when your best friend's habit of tapping his foot stops being a quirk and starts being a justifiable reason for homicide. They got along well, Mòr says, his voice breaking the quiet. He's defending them again. He needs them to be heroes. Ducat was a good principal, strict but fair. Marshall was, steady. And MacArthur was a good lad, a quiet lad. Quiet, you repeat? Yes, kept to himself mostly. Until he started praying, you remind him. Mòr flinches. The storm did that, the fear. Maybe, you say. Or maybe the fear was already here. You walk over to the window and look out at the light tower. It's a phallic symbol of order, but inside, it's a machine. And machines have byproducts. There is a theory, a darker chemical theory about Lighthouse Madness. The lens. The massive Fresnel lens floats in a bath of mercury to allow it to rotate smoothly. Mercury, quicksilver. In the 19th century, we didn't know much about heavy metal poisoning. We knew hatters went mad, but we thought it was the glue. We didn't realize that breathing mercury vapor in a confined space for 12 hours a night slowly liquefies your brain. It causes tremors, paranoia, hallucinations, emotional instability. Did they complain of headaches? You ask Mòr. Strange tastes in their mouths. Mòr frowns. Ducat mentioned his teeth hurting, said they felt loose. Your stomach drops. Loose teeth. A classic symptom. Imagine Ducat, the irritable principal keeper, breathing in the fumes night after night, his gums bleeding, his hands shaking. He starts to see things in the dark. He starts to suspect that Marshall is plotting against him. He starts to think that MacArthur's praying isn't to God, but to something else. What if it wasn't the sea? You whisper. What do you mean? Mòr asks. What if the storm was in here? You tap your temple. Researchers still argue about the interpersonal dynamics of the Flannan keepers. We know Ducat was a family man, 43 years old, experienced. Marshall was 28, the second assistant. MacArthur was 40, the occasional. That's a strange dynamic. The boss, the young upstart, and the temp. The temp, MacArthur was known to be a bit volatile. He was a local man from Uig. He knew the legends. He knew about the phantom of the 7 hunters, the spirit that is said to hate intruders. He knew that Eilean Mòr was holy ground, a place where monks used to live in isolation to get closer to God or further from people. You walk into the bunk room. You look at the 3 beds. They are too close together. If you lie in the middle bunk, you can hear the man on the left breathing. You can smell the man on the right. Did they fight, you ask? Never, Mòr says quickly, too quickly. Arguments, sure, about the roster, about the coal, but never, never violence. Everyone fights eventually, you say. Put 3 saints in a cell, and within a month, 2 of them will be plotting to shank the 3rd with a crucifix. It's a cynical joke, but the Lighthouse breeds cynicism. It strips away the veneer of civilization. You sit down on one of the beds. The mattress is lumpy. Straw and horsehair. Let's go back to the logbook. Ducat irritable. That word implies a snapping point. It implies a man who is done with the wind, done with the noise, done with MacArthur's humming. And then, Marshall cried, why did the tough guy cry? Was it the storm, or was it the tension? Was it the realization that he was trapped in a stone tower with 2 men who were losing their minds? There is a phenomenon called the third man factor, but there is also something called folie à deux, or in this case, folie à trois, shared psychosis. Madness is contagious. If the principal keeper, the man in charge, starts believing that the waves are trying to talk to him, how long before the assistants start listening too? They were professionals, Mòr insists. He's pacing now. The small room is making him anxious. They wouldn't break, not like that. Everyone breaks, you say softly. It's just a question of how much pressure you apply. You look at the walls. They are whitewashed stone, clean, sterile. But if these walls could talk, they wouldn't tell a story of a storm. They would tell a story of silence, of long, stretching hours where the only sound was the ticking clock and the scratching of a pen. Tick, tick, tick. He's watching me, one of them thinks. Tick, 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 tick. He knows what I did. Tick, tick, tick. Why won't he stop humming? You stand up. The room feels suffocating. You need to get out, but there is nowhere to go. That's the horror of the island. The cottage is a cage, but the island is just a bigger cage with water bars. Let's check the provisions again, you say, just to have something to do, just to break the cycle of your own thoughts. You walk back to the pantry. You look at the shelves, cans of meat, jars of pickles, bags of flour, and then you see it. On the bottom shelf, tucked behind a sack of potatoes, is a bottle, whiskey. I thought alcohol was forbidden, you say, pointing. Mòr freezes. He stares at the bottle. It is. Strictly. Instant dismissal. So whose is this? Mòr hesitates. It might be medicinal. For emergencies. You pick up the bottle, it's empty. 3 men, 1 bottle of contraband whiskey, a storm outside, a mercury-poisoned brain, a religious fanatic. Do the math. They drank it, you say. When? Maybe during the storm, Mòr guesses, to calm their nerves. Or maybe before, you say. Maybe that's why the logbook is so strange. Sea lashed to fury. Maybe they were drunk. Maybe they were hallucinating. Drunk men don't clean the lens, Mòr argues. They don't polish the brass. The tower was spotless. He has a point. The maintenance was perfect. The routine was upheld. Drunks get sloppy. Madmen get messy. But everything here is precise. That's the most disturbing part. The madness wasn't chaotic. It was organized. It was a functional psychosis. They did their jobs. They wound the clock. They trimmed the lamps. And then, calmly, rationally, they walked into the ocean. Or did they? You put the empty bottle back. It clinks against the stone. There is a joke about Scottish lighthouse keepers. What do you call a lighthouse keeper with a bottle of whiskey? A philosopher. What do you call a lighthouse keeper with an empty bottle? A murderer. You look at Mòr. He doesn't look like a murderer. He looks like a lost child. But you wonder, what if he knows more than he's saying? What if the relief he felt upon arriving wasn't just about taking over the shift? We should go back to the ship, Mòr says. It's getting dark. We can't stay here tonight. Not yet. No, you say. We have to stay. The light must be lit. Mòr pales. We. Tonight. Someone has to do it, the regulations say. To hell with the regulations, Mòr shouts. It's the first time he's raised his voice. This place is cursed. Can't you feel it? I feel it, you say. But if we leave the light dark, ships will die. And then we'll have more ghosts to deal with. You are going to stay. You are going to spend the night in the cottage where 3 men evaporated. You are going to sleep in their beds. You are going to eat their food. Well, maybe not the mutton. But as you stand there, in the fading light of the afternoon, you realize that the isolation is already working on you. You've been here for 2 hours, and already the wind sounds like voices. Already, the shadows in the corner look like men. You look at the empty chair again. He didn't jump up because he was scared, you say suddenly. What? The chair. He didn't jump up in fear. He jumped up in anger. You mime the motion. You sit in the chair. You slam your hands on the table. You stand up violently, kicking the chair back. Enough. You shout at the empty room. I've had enough of your praying. I've had enough of your humming. I'm going out. Mòr stares at you, eyes wide. And then he ran out, you continue, breathless, without his coat. Because he wasn't going into the storm to work. He was going into the storm to get away from him. You point at the third chair, the empty chair of Donald MacArthur. It's just a theory, a story you're telling yourself to make sense of the chaos. But it feels right. It feels heavy with truth. The pressure cooker exploded, the lid blew off, and the ocean was just waiting to catch the debris. You step out of the cottage again, driven by a restlessness that won't let you sit still. Mòr stays behind, ostensibly to start the preparations for the lamp, but really because he doesn't want to be alone with the island anymore. He'd rather be alone with the brass. Brass he understands. Brass doesn't judge you. You walk east this time, away from the violence of the landing, toward the ruins that sit on the far side of the plateau. The sun is starting to dip low, casting long, bruised shadows across the turf. The light is turning that strange, milky gray that isn't quite day and isn't quite night. The gloaming, the Scots call it. It's the time when shapes lose their edges and the world becomes fluid. Eilean Mòr isn't just a rock. It's a holy place. Long before the engineers came with their concrete and their Fresnel lenses, this island belonged to the monks. You reach the ruins of the chapel. It's small, just a dry stone box dedicated to St. Flannan. It looks pathetic against the backdrop of the Atlantic, a tiny pile of rocks trying to assert a spiritual copyright over 1 billion tons of water. There is a mainstream historical fact that is often overlooked in the excitement of the disappearance. For centuries, shepherds from the Hebrides would bring their sheep here to graze, but they would never, ever stay the night. They would drop the sheep off and row away as fast as they could. If the weather turned and they were forced to stay, they would spend the entire night on their knees in this chapel, praying for the sun to come up. Why? Because of the 7 hunters. You touch the rough stone of the chapel wall. It feels ancient. It feels like it's vibrating on a frequency you can't quite hear. The locals believe the Flannan Isles are inhabited by the lustrous little people, not the cute Disney fairies with wings and glitter. These are the old kind, the dangerous kind. The kind that look like shriveled old men and will steal your baby just to see if it bounces. And they have rules. Oh, do they have rules? There is a list of taboos for anyone stepping foot on Eilean Mòr. It's like a rental agreement from hell. Do not turn widdershins. When you land, you must turn sunwise clockwise. To turn anti-clockwise is to invite the devil. Do not use iron. You shouldn't bring iron tools onto the holy turf. A bit awkward for lighthouse keepers surrounded by tons of machinery, isn't it? Do not kill the birds. The puffins and the gannets are the souls of dead monks. Do not use proper names. You think about that last one. We touched on it before, but stand here in the ruins and really think about it. You can't say Eilean Mòr. You have to say the country. You can't say minister. You have to say the man with the black coat. You can't say mad. You have to say away. It's a linguistic dance, a code. It implies that the spirits are listening, and they are very specific about their grammar. Did they follow the rules? You whisper to the empty chapel. MacArthur knew them. He was a Lewis man. He grew up with these stories in his mother's milk. He knew that if you mention the word rabbit, gare, the spirits will trip you. He knew that if you forgot to take your hat off when you landed, you were showing disrespect. But Ducat, Marshall. They were modern men, men of science. They probably laughed at the rules. They probably called a rabbit, and a church. Superstitious nonsense, Ducat would have said. Pass me the iron wrench. And maybe, just maybe, the island took offense. There is a fringe theory, one that makes you chuckle nervously, about the phantom of the 7 hunters. Some legends speak of a giant bird, a creature that isn't quite an avian and isn't quite a man. It watches, it waits. And when it strikes, it doesn't leave a mark. You look up at the sky. A great skua, a bongzi, dives overhead. It's a nasty bird, aggressive and fearless. It creates a whooshing sound as it passes, like a tear in the fabric of the air. Whoosh. Just a bird, you say. But then you remember the logbook, Marshall cried. Why would a sailor cry? Maybe he didn't cry from sadness. Maybe he cried from recognition. What if Marshall saw something outside the window that wasn't a storm? What if he saw a face pressing against the glass? A face that looked like a bird, or a shriveled old man, or a reflection of his own sins? Researchers still argue whether these superstitions are just psychological defense mechanisms, ways for pre-scientific people to explain the random cruelty of nature, or if they are based on something tangible, infrasound, again. The geology of the island creates vibrations that make you feel watched. The phantom is just your own brain misinterpreting a sound wave. But standing here, in the shadow of the 7th century chapel, science feels very far away. Science is for the mainland. Out here, the old gods still have tenure. You walk around the back of the chapel. There, in the dirt, you see something. A footprint. It's faint, half erased by the wind, but it's there. A boot print. It's pointing away from the lighthouse, toward the cliff edge. MacArthur, you guess? Did he come here to pray? The logbook said he was praying. Did he retreat to the old holy ground when the lighthouse, the symbol of the new world, failed to protect him? Imagine him kneeling here in the mud, the wind howling. The phantom, circling overhead. He's reciting the Lord's Prayer, but he's mixing it with the old pagan incantations. He's hedging his bets. He's trying to apologize to the lustras for the iron tower, for the bright light that blinds the spirits, for the arrogance of men who think they can tame the dark. And then, he stops. He stands up. He walks to the edge. Why? Because he heard the call. The glaystig, the water spirit. It cries like a woman. It cries like a drowning child. Donald, help me. He knows it's a trap. He knows the lore. But he's a man. He's a keeper. He can't ignore a cry for help. So he puts on his coat. He walks to the edge. He looks down. And the sea reaches up. It's just a story, you say aloud. You are trying to convince yourself. They died in a wave. It was physics. Mass times velocity equals death. But as you turn back toward the lighthouse, you feel it. The prickle. The sensation of eyes on the back of your neck. You spin around. Nothing. Just the ruins. Just the sheep grazing on the turf, looking at you with their horizontal alien pupils. There is a joke the shepherds tell. Why do the sheep on Eilean Mòr never sleep? Because they're afraid they'll wake up as mutton. You laugh. It's a dry, hacking sound. It dies instantly in the wind. You start walking back to the compound. The sun is gone now. The gloaming is ending. The real dark is coming, the kind of dark that feels solid. As you approach the lighthouse, you see the lantern room. Mòr is up there. You see a flicker of movement. He's lighting the lamps. Flash. The beam swings out, cutting through the twilight. It sweeps over your head, a sword of light slashing at the ghosts. Flash. It's comforting. It's civilization. It's a middle finger to the lustras. But then you look at the shadows the light creates. Every time the beam swings, the shadows jump. They stretch. They contort. The rocks look like crouching men. The grass looks like grasping fingers. You realize the irony. The light doesn't chase the monsters away. It creates them. It gives them form. Without the light, there is just darkness. With the light, there are things hiding in the dark. You reach the unlocked gate. You hesitate. Do you close it? If you close it, you are admitting you are afraid. You are admitting that there is something to keep out. You leave it open. You tell yourself it's because you are rational. But deep down, you know the truth. You leave it open because if you close it, and then you hear the latch lift, you will lose your mind. You step into the courtyard. The wind whistles through the wire stays of the mast. Hush! I'm not listening, you whisper. You enter the cottage. Mòr is coming down the stairs. He looks pale but composed. The job is done. The light is burning. It's lit, he says. Good, you say. Now we just have to survive the night. Don't say that, he snaps. Sorry, joke. Not funny. You sit down at the table with the cold mutton. You are hungry now, despite the horror. Your body is demanding fuel. We should eat, you say. Mòr looks at the mutton. He looks at you. Not that, he says. Open a tin, a fresh tin. You nod. You understand. You don't eat the dead men's meal. That's rule number 5. As you reach for a tin of beef, you glance at the window. It's pitch black outside. The glass is a mirror. You can see yourself. You can see Mòr. And for a second, just a split second, you see a third reflection. Faint. Blurry. Standing just behind Mòr, you blink. It's gone. What? Mòr asks, seeing your face. Nothing, you lie. Just a smudge. But you know it wasn't a smudge. You know what it was. It was the phantom. Or the third man. Or maybe, just maybe, it was James Ducat, coming back to check if you wound the clock. Did you wind it? You ask suddenly. What? The clock. Did you wind it? Mòr's eyes widen. I forgot. Wind it, you say. Now. Because as long as the clock is ticking, you are still in time. You are still in the world of the living. If the clock stops again, you belong to them. Mòr scrambles to the mantelpiece. He opens the vase. He turns the key. Kirk, kirk, kirk. The sound is loud, aggressive. Tick, tick, tick. The heartbeat returns. The house is alive again. But outside, in the dark, the 7 hunters are watching. And they are patient. They have been here for 1,000,000 years. They can wait for a clock to run down. You sit there at the table watching Mòr chew on a piece of corned beef with the grim determination of a man eating his own shoes. The clock is ticking, tick, 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 a steady metronome that divides the silence into digestible chunks. But despite the warmth of the small fire you've managed to coax back into the grate, your mind isn't here. It's drifting. It's drifting about 3,000 miles southwest and about 28 years back in time. You can't help it. The scene in this cottage, the untouched meal, the halted work, the eerie sense of interruption, it screams one name to anyone who knows anything about the sea. Mary Celeste. You know the story. Everyone knows the story. It's the maritime equivalent of a nursery rhyme for insomniacs. December 5th, 1872. The brigantine Mary Celeste is found drifting in the Atlantic, somewhere between the Azores and Portugal. She's under partial sail. She's seaworthy. She has plenty of food and water. But there isn't a soul on board. Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife Sarah, their 2-year-old daughter Sophia, and 7 crew members. Gone. Just like Ducat, Marshall, and MacArthur. Evaporated. It reminds you of her, doesn't it? You say, breaking the silence. Mòr looks up, fork halfway to his mouth. Who? The Mary Celeste. Mòr shudders. Don't bring up ghost ships, man. Not tonight. It's the food, he presses on, gesturing to the congealed mutton that still sits on the table, like an uninvited guest. The famous detail about the Mary Celeste was the breakfast table. They said the tea was still warm in the cups. They said there was a half-eaten egg. Is that true? Mòr asks, despite himself. He's a sailor. He can't resist a sea story even if it scares him. No, you admit, that was a lie, a myth invented by a young writer named Arthur Conan Doyle. Before he invented Sherlock Holmes, he wrote a short story about the ship called J. Habakkuk Jephson's Statement. He added the warm tea, the still smoking pipe, the chaotic breakfast. He turned a mystery into a melodrama. But here, in the Flannan Isles, the melodrama is real. The mutton is here. The pipe was smoked. Reality has outdone fiction. You think about the parallels. Both mysteries involve experienced men. Captain Briggs was a veteran. Ducat was a veteran. Both involve a sudden, inexplicable evacuation, and both involve a complete lack of violence. On the Mary Celeste, nothing was broken. No signs of a struggle. The only thing missing was the lifeboat. That's the difference, you murmur. What? The boat. The Mary Celeste had a lifeboat. It was missing. The crew got in and left. Here. You point toward the window, toward the dark landings. The boat is still in the cradle on the east landing and the west landing. You don't launch a boat from there. Not in a storm. Not ever. So the Mary Celeste crew chose to leave. They abandoned ship. They looked at their perfectly good vessel and decided, for some reason, that a tiny open boat in the middle of the ocean was safer. Researchers still argue whether it was fumes from the raw alcohol cargo that caused the evacuation, a pressure explosion that spooked the captain, or if it was a seaquake or a waterspout. But the core horror remains the same, the moment of decision, the moment when a rational man looks at safety and sees danger, and looks at danger and sees safety. Maybe they didn't leave, Mòr says quietly. Maybe they were taken. By what? The same thing that took the crew of the Carol A. Deering. Ah, the Carol A. Deering, the ghost ship of the Outer Banks. Found in 1921, run aground with all sails set and food on the stove. The only living thing on board, a six-toed cat. There is a joke among maritime insurers. If you find a ghost ship, do you get to keep the deposit? It's a way of deflecting the financial horror of a lost asset, but the human horror is stickier. There was no cat here, you say, just the sheep. And the birds, Mòr adds, the damn birds. You think about the obscure tidbit involving the Mary Celeste's lifeboat. The theory is that the crew boarded the yawl, attached it to the main ship with a long tow line, and sat there waiting for the danger, fumes, or fire to pass. But then, the wind picked up, the rope snapped, and the Mary Celeste sailed away, empty and indifferent, leaving 10 people to watch their salvation disappear over the horizon. Is that what happened here? Did the men go down to the west landing, rope themselves together to secure the gear, and then, snap. The rope was gone, you remember? The box with the ropes was gone. So they were tied, Mòr asks. Tied to what? To the island, to the rock. Imagine that. 3 men roped to a rock hanging over the edge, staring down into the Sloch Knob Bay stay. And then the rock gives way, or the rope breaks, and they fall together. A chain reaction of flesh and gravity. It's the silence that bothers me, you say. On a ship, you have the creaking of the wood, the slap of the water. But here, inside these walls, it's just stone. Stone remembers, Mòr whispers. It's a phrase he picked up from the locals. Stone remembers. You look at the clock again. Tick, tick. There is another parallel, one that is rarely discussed because it makes people uncomfortable. The Joyita. Found drifting in the South Pacific in 1955. 25 people missing. The ship was unsinkable. Literally, it had cork lining the hull. It couldn't sink. And yet, the crew panicked and abandoned it. Why do we panic? Why do we leave the fortress? It's the flight response. But sometimes our brain misidentifies the threat. We run from the spider and jump off the cliff. Maybe they went mad, you say, like we talked about. The mercury, the isolation. Madness doesn't make you disappear, Mòr counters. Madness makes you messy. It makes you scream. It doesn't make you vanish without a trace. Unless the ocean is the asylum, you say, it's a bad line, a B-movie line. But in the dim light, with the wind picking up again outside, it feels profound. You stand up and walk to the window. You can't see the ocean, but you can hear it. It's a low, rhythmic thudding against the cliffs. It sounds like a heart, a very big, very slow heart. You know, you say, there's a theory about the Mary Celeste that involves a sea monster, a giant squid. Mòr snorts. Squid don't eat people. They eat whales. Do they? Or do we just assume that because we never find the people they ate? Stop it, Mòr says. You're trying to scare me. I'm trying to scare myself, you admit. Because if it's a squid or a seaquake or a rogue wave, then it's natural, it's biology, it's physics. I can deal with physics. Physics doesn't hate you, physics just happens. And if it's not physics, Mòr asks, you don't answer. You look at the reflection in the glass again. You look for the third man. If it's not physics, you think, then it's the lustras, it's the blue men, it's the phantom. And you can't fight a phantom with a grappling hook. You sit back down. The tin of beef is half empty. You've eaten without tasting it. The Mary Celeste was never used again, you say. After they brought her back, no sailor would work on her. She was cursed. Her owners eventually wrecked her on purpose for the insurance fraud. They drove her onto a reef just to kill her. Why are you telling me this? Mòr asks. Because, you say, looking around the cottage, this place is the Mary Celeste. It's a cursed vessel. It's stuck on a rock, but it's still a vessel, and we are the salvage crew. We aren't wrecking it, Mòr says firmly. We are keeping the light. For now, you say. But how long until the next crew vanishes? How long until the board decides that it's cheaper to let ships crash than to feed men to the rock? There is a joke in the Lighthouse service. The pay is bad, the food is worse, but at least the commute is fatal. You laugh. Mòr doesn't. We should sleep, Mòr says. One of us watches, one of us sleeps. Agreed, you say. I'll take the first watch. Mòr looks relieved. He stands up and moves toward the bunk room. He pauses at the door. If you hear anything, he starts. I know, you say. Don't open the door. No, Mòr says. If you hear anything, wake me up. Don't die alone. He goes into the room. You hear the springs of the bed creak. You are alone in the kitchen, just you, the clock, and the ghost of the Mary Celeste. You think about the tea myth again. Warm tea. It implies that the interruption happened seconds before discovery. Here, the interruption happened days ago. The tea is cold. The mutton is wax. But the feeling is the same. The feeling that the people who were here didn't leave. They were stopped. Like a film reel that snapped mid-scene. You look at the chair, the overturned one. You look at the door, and for the first time you realize that the most terrifying thing about the Mary Celeste wasn't that the people were missing. It was that the breakfast was still there. The objects survive. The people don't. That is the fundamental horror of the universe. The spoon outlasts the hand that held it. The lighthouse outlasts the keeper. You pick up the silver fork. You stare at your own reflection in the metal. It's distorted, twisted. We are just guests, you whisper to the fork. And the host is getting hungry. Outside, the wind howls. It sounds like a name. Sarah, Sophia, James, Thomas. The ocean collects names. It has a library of them in the deep. And tonight, you are sitting in the waiting room hoping your name isn't next on the list. Mòr is snoring. It's a wet, snuffly sound that usually implies a deep sleep, but here it sounds desperate, as if his body is fighting to stay unconscious because the alternative is waking up in this room. You sit by the dying embers of the fire, the watchman of a fortress that has already been breached. The silence of the night is different from the silence of the day. The day's silence was heavy. The night's silence is active. It prowls. You stare at the overturned chair again. You've been avoiding it, but now, with Mòr gone, it demands your attention. It's the only disorderly object in a room of perfect order. Why? The official story. The one you know the Northern Lighthouse Board will eventually publish will blame the weather. It's clean. It's blameless. It doesn't affect the insurance premiums. But in the dark, another theory starts to form. A theory that has nothing to do with waves or ghosts, and everything to do with the fact that humans are the most dangerous animals on the planet. You think of the Smalls Lighthouse tragedy of 1801. It's a famous horror story in the service. Two keepers, Thomas Howell and Thomas Griffith, trapped in a lighthouse off the coast of Wales. They hated each other. When Griffith died of illness, or so the story goes, Howell didn't toss the body into the sea because he was afraid he'd be accused of murder. So he built a coffin and lashed it to the outside railing. But the wind tore the coffin apart, and for weeks the dead arm of Griffith would wave in the wind, tapping against the glass of the lantern room, beckoning his enemy to join him. Howell was driven mad. When they finally rescued him, his hair had turned white. That is what happens when men are trapped with death. But what if the death isn't accidental? You look at the empty bottle of whiskey in your mind's eye. You look at the logbook entries. Irritable, crying, praying. These aren't weather reports. These are symptoms of a breakdown. Let's play out a different scenario. It's December 15th. The weather is fine. The chores are done. They sit down to lunch. But the tension that has been building for weeks, the cabin fever, the mercury poisoning, the personality clashes, finally snaps. Maybe it was over something trivial. A game of cards. A comment about the mutton. Or maybe it was about duty. Imagine Ducat, the strict principal, catching MacArthur drinking, or catching him neglecting the light to pray. An argument starts. Voices are raised. Crash. The chair goes over, not because someone was startled, but because someone stood up to fight. "You can't tell me what to do," MacArthur shouts. He's a big man, a strong man. Ducat pushes him. Marshall tries to intervene. "Lad, stop it!" But the red mist has descended. The curad, Mir, the battle frenzy of the old Celtic warriors. The fight spills out of the kitchen. They go outside. Why? Because there's no room to fight in here. Or maybe one of them runs. MacArthur runs. He grabs his coat. Not because of the weather, but because he knows he's leaving. He's quitting. Or he's escaping. He runs to the west landing. Ducat and Marshall chase him. They run out in their shirt sleeves because rage keeps you warm. Rage is the best insulation. They catch him at the cliff edge, 110 feet above the churning water. "Get back here," Ducat yells. "You'll be court-martialed." "I'd rather be dead," MacArthur screams. And then, a push, a slip, a grapple that goes wrong. Researchers and criminologists still debate the murder-suicide theory. It fits the psychological profile of isolation. It explains the missing gear. It explains the lack of bodies. If you kill someone on a rock in the middle of the ocean, you don't have to hide the body. You just let gravity do the paperwork. But if it was murder, who was the killer? Was it Ducat, the authoritarian who snapped when his authority was challenged? Did he push MacArthur and then realized what he had done, jump after him in a fit of remorse? Or was it MacArthur, the quiet one? Did the voices in his head finally tell him to cleanse the island? Did he shove the other two over the edge and then stand there, watching them fall before calmly stepping off himself? God is over all, the logbook said. Maybe that wasn't a prayer. Maybe it was a justification. God is over all, and I am his instrument. You shudder. The fire pops, a sudden sharp sound that makes you jump. You look at the door. You almost expect it to open and see a wet, angry James Ducat standing there demanding to know why you're sitting in his chair. There is an obscure, grim belief in the Hebrides that spilling blood on holy ground, like Eilean Mòr, wakes the earth. The soil itself rejects the violence. If a murder happens here, the island will shake the killer off like a dog shaking off fleas. Maybe the rogue wave wasn't a random event. Maybe it was the island's response to a fist fight. You rub your eyes. You are tired. Your brain is making patterns where there are none. You are turning a tragedy into a crime novel because a crime implies a motive. A crime implies human agency. And that is less scary than a mindless, hungry ocean. But then you remember the oilskins again. If it was a fight, why did only MacArthur have a coat? Maybe he was waiting for them. Maybe he was outside, hiding in the dark, watching them through the window as they ate. Maybe he lured them out. "Come and see," he might have shouted. The crane. It's broken. Ducat and Marshall rush out. They see their colleague in distress. They run to the landing. And MacArthur, waiting in the shadows with a heavy iron bar. "Stop it," you whisper. "You're making it worse." But the thought is sticky. It clings to you. You look at the dark corner of the room where the shadows are deepest. You imagine the violence. The sound of a blow connecting with a skull. The splash that is swallowed instantly by the roar of the surf. There is a joke, lawyers tell. What's the difference between a good lawyer and a bad lawyer? A bad lawyer can let a case drag on for years. A good lawyer can make it disappear. The Atlantic Ocean is the best lawyer in the world. It has never lost a case. It has never given up a client. You stand up and walk to the oilskin rack. You touch the empty peg where MacArthur's coat should be. Did you jump? You ask the peg, or were you pushed? The peg doesn't answer. It just stares back, a wooden finger pointing at the floor. You go back to the table. You sit down. You listen to more snore, snort, wheeze, snort. It strikes you that you are now in the exact same position as they were. You are trapped in a tower with another man. You barely know him. He seems nice enough. But then again, everyone seems nice until the wind stops blowing and the mercury starts leaking. What if Mòr wakes up and decides he doesn't like the way you chew? Don't be ridiculous, you tell yourself. Mòr is sane. But sanity is a relative term out here. Sanity is just the ability to ignore the voices for 5 more minutes. You look at the clock. 2000 a.m. The witching hour. The hour when the body temperature drops and the spirit weakens. You realize that the theory of the fight is the most depressing theory of all. If it was ghosts, it's tragic. If it was a wave, it's nature. But if it was murder, if 3 men who relied on each other for survival turned on each other, that means there is no safety, not even in brotherhood, not even in duty. It means that the darkness isn't just outside the walls, it's inside the skin. You lean back in the chair, the upright one, and close your eyes. You try to sleep, but every time you drift off, you see the west landing. You see 3 figures struggling on the edge of the world. You see a hand reaching out, not to save, but to shove, and you hear the wind laughing, because the wind knows. The wind was the only witness. And the wind is a terrible gossip, but it speaks a language you can't quite translate. Push, 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 or is it hush, hush, hush? You decide to keep your eyes open. You decide that sleep is a luxury you can't afford, not while the empty chair is looking at you like that. The clock hands crawl past 3000 a.m. This is the dead zone, the time of night when even the ghosts have gone to bed, leaving the world to the insomniacs and the guilty. You are still sitting in the kitchen, but your mind has moved on from murder. Murder feels too small, too personal. You're starting to think bigger. You're starting to think about why the authorities are so keen to blame the weather. Let's look at the context. It's 1900. The world is on the brink. The British Empire is fighting the Boer War. Germany is building a navy that rivals the Royal Navy. The seas are crawling with tension. Wireless telegraphy. Marconi's magic is just starting to be a thing. Information is power. And lighthouses. Lighthouses are the eyes of the empire. What if Eilean Mòr wasn't just a lighthouse? You stand up and pace the small room. The floorboards creak under your boots. Think about it, you whisper to the empty air. A remote island, a strategic location, a perfect place to hide something. Or see something. What if the storm in the logbook wasn't weather at all? What if sea lashed to fury was code? There is a mainstream historical fact that adds fuel to this fire. The Flannan Isles sits right in the path of the North Atlantic shipping lanes. Any ship coming from America to Scandinavia or Germany passes near here. What if the keepers saw a ship they weren't supposed to see? A prototype. A foreign warship testing the waters. The logbook mentioned a ship. December 12th, ship passing sounding foghorn. Could see lights of cabins. Why note the lights of the cabins? Unless it was unusual. Unless the ship was supposed to be running dark. Imagine Ducat looking through his telescope. He sees a shape in the mist. It's not a merchant vessel. It's sleek, gray. Guns covered in tarps. He writes it down. He notes the coordinates. And the ship sees him. You don't just disappear because of a wave, you mutter. You disappear because you know too much. This is the government conspiracy theory. It's the tinfoil hat special, but at 3:30 a.m., it makes a terrifying amount of sense. It explains the quick wrap-up. It explains why the investigation was so eager to conclude accident. If the government knew that a German raider, or worse, a British experimental vessel had removed the witnesses, they wouldn't tell the public. They would bury it. They would seal the file for 100 years. Loose lips sink ships, as the saying goes. But in this case, maybe a ship sank loose lips. You look at the pantry again, the empty whiskey bottle. What if it wasn't their whiskey? What if it was a gift or a bribe? There is an obscure, fringe legend in the Hebrides about the dark ship, a vessel with black sails that appears before a tragedy. But maybe the dark ship isn't supernatural. Maybe it's a stealth ship, a smuggler, or a spy. The keepers go down to the landing. They meet the boat. A transaction goes wrong. Or maybe the payment for their silence was a bullet, and the bodies were taken away to ensure no evidence washed up. Spies in wool coats, you chuckle darkly. James Bond in a sou'wester. It sounds ridiculous in the daylight, but here, in the shadows, it feels plausible. Researchers and archivists still argue whether the Northern Lighthouse Board destroyed correspondence from the keepers in the weeks leading up to the disappearance. There are gaps in the records, letters that were sent but never arrived, or arrived and were burned. What were they writing home about? Dear wife, the weather is fine, but the Germans are very loud tonight. And then there's the secret cargo theory. The box. The missing supply box on the West Landing. We assumed it held ropes. But what if it held something else? What if the lighthouse was a drop point? A dead drop for intelligence agents moving between continents. The keepers went down to retrieve the package. But someone else was there first. Or the package was booby-trapped. You look at the walls of the cottage. They feel thick, impenetrable. But are they? Or are they just another layer of the cage? This theory shifts the horror. It's no longer about nature or madness. It's about bureaucracy. It's about the fact that to the people in London, James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur weren't men. They were assets, and assets are expendable. There is a joke among civil servants. The government is like a baby. An alimentary canal with a big appetite at one end and no sense of responsibility at the other. If the government decided these men had to go, they would go, and the paperwork would be immaculate. You sit back down. You feel small. You feel like an ant on a chessboard where the players are giants you can't even see. They were erased, you realize, not killed, erased. And what about you? You and Mòr. You are here now. You are reading the logbook. You are seeing the damage. Are you compromised? You look at the window. Is there a ship out there right now? Watching the light. Checking to see if the replacements are falling into line. A shiver runs down your spine that has nothing to do with the cold. It's the paranoia of the watched. You remember the God is over all entry. What if that wasn't religious? What if God was a code name? Gold is overall. Government is overall. Okay, now you're reaching. Now you're just making anagrams in the dark. But that's what this place does. It strips away your logic and replaces it with patterns. You think about the witness protection angle. The funny, absurd theory. Maybe they just wanted to leave. Maybe they flagged down a ship bound for America, hopped on board, and started new lives in New York City as the Flannan Brothers, a vaudeville act. And for our next trick, we will disappear. It's a nice thought. It's a hopeful thought. But it dies when you look at the cold hearth. You don't leave your pipe behind if you're defecting. You don't leave your life. No, they didn't leave. They were taken, or they were terminated. You look at the clock again, 30:30 a.m. There is a scholarly debate about the whitewash of the official report. Robert Muirhead, the superintendent who investigated the disappearance, was a friend of the keepers. He knew them personally, and yet his report is dry. Clinical, he concludes. Accident, almost immediately. Did he know? Was he protecting their families from the shame of suicide? Or was he protecting the board from the scandal of murder? Or was he protecting the realm? Muirhead, you whisper, what did you find that you didn't write down? Did he find a bullet casing? Did he find a German coin? Did he find a note that said, "They are coming for us. You'll never know. The file is closed. The men are dead." And you are sitting in their kitchen waiting for the sun to rise so you can pretend none of this scares you. But the fear of the government is a special kind of fear. It's the fear of the machine. The ocean is chaotic, but the state is organized. The ocean might kill you by accident, but the state kills you on purpose. If the government is watching, you say to the room, raising your voice slightly, you guys are doing a terrible job of maintenance. The draft in here is criminal. No one laughs, not even the wind. You lean your head back against the stone wall. It sucks the heat right out of your skull. You think about the concept of the panopticon. The prison where the prisoners can't see the guards, but they know the guards might be watching, so they police themselves. The lighthouse is a reverse panopticon. You are in the center, surrounded by glass, looking out. But you can't see anything in the dark. But everything in the dark can see you. The light announces your presence every 30 seconds. Flash, here I am. Flash, come and get me. Flash, I am alone. You are a beacon for every spy, every monster, every rogue wave in the Atlantic. Mòr shifts in his sleep. He mumbles something. It sounds like inspection. Even in his dreams, he's worried about the bosses. Don't worry, Joseph, you whisper. The inspection is over. We failed. You close your eyes, just for a second. And in that second, you see a ship. A black ship with no lights. Is sitting just off the west landing. A boat is lowered. Men in dark coats climb in. They row silently toward the steps. They have iron bars. They have orders. And waiting for them at the top of the stairs is Donald MacArthur, in his oilskins, realizing too late that the relief boat isn't here to save them. You snap your eyes open. Stop it, you hiss. You need a distraction. You need something to ground you in the mundane. You pick up the logbook again. You run your finger over the embossed letters on the cover. Northern Lighthouse Board. Maybe the scariest thing is that they were replaced so quickly. You are the replacement. You are the spare part plugged into the machine to keep it running. The machine doesn't care about the previous parts. It grinds them up and asks for more. And that is the true horror of the conspiracy. It's not about malice. It's about indifference. The light must burn. The trade must flow. The empire must grow. If 3 men have to die to keep the shipping lanes open, that's just a line item in the budget. Cost of doing business, you mutter. The wind rattles the door latch. It sounds like someone trying to get in. Someone with a key. But you locked it, didn't you? You look at the bolt. Yes, locked. But who has the other key? The board. And if they want to come in, a bolt won't stop them. You realize, with a sinking sensation in your gut, that you are protecting the wrong side of the door. You are worried about what's outside. But the real danger, the orders, the neglect, the silence, came from the mainland. It came from the very people who sent you here. You are trapped between the devil and the deep blue sea. And the devil signs your paycheck. Light comes slowly to Eilean Mòr. It doesn't break, it bruises. The black sky turns to a deep purple, then a sickly gray, revealing the world in monochromatic detail. You survived the night. The door didn't burst open. The government didn't come to silence you. Mòr wakes up with a gasp, sitting bolt upright as if he's surfacing from a deep dive. He looks around, wild-eyed, until he sees you. Morning, you say. Your voice sounds rusty. Is it? Mòr rubs his face. It feels like the same day. He's right. Time here isn't linear, it's circular. It's just light and dark, on repeat forever. You stand up. Your joints crack. The cold has stiffened you into a board. We need to go back out, you say. Now that we have light, we need to measure. Measure what? The damage. We need to know if it was possible. You are done with ghosts. You are done with spies. In the cold light of morning, you are a rational man again. You want numbers. You want physics. You want to prove that what happened here was a tragedy of geometry, not a tragedy of souls. You head back to the west landing. The wind has dropped slightly, but the sea is still angry. It heaves and swells, a gray blanket covering a billion secrets. You stand on the edge of the cliff looking down at the twisted railing. You look at the spot where the supply box was ripped from the stone. 110 feet, you say. 33 meters. For a wave to reach this high, it would have to be colossal. Here is the mainstream scientific fact that makes your blood run cold. For most of the 20th century, scientists didn't believe in waves this big. They called them sailors' tales. They said that mathematically, a wave couldn't get much higher than 50 feet. They said the probability of a 100-foot wave was once in 10,000 years. They were wrong. On New Year's Day, 1995, a wave hit the Dropner oil platform in the North Sea. It was measured by laser. It was 84 feet high, a wall of water that defied the linear model of oceanography. It proved that rogue waves, or freak waves, are real. They happen, and they happen a lot more often than we thought. A hole in the ocean, you murmur. What? Mòr asks. That's what the old sailors call it, you say. This is the obscure tidbit. Before a rogue wave hits, the trough is so deep that it looks like the sea has opened up. A ship falls into the hole, and then the wall of water crashes down on top of it. Imagine standing here, on the landing. You look out. The sea suddenly drops away. The horizon disappears. And then you look up. You don't look out at the wave. You look up at it. It's just water, Mòr says, trying to sound brave. Water is soft. Water is heavy, you correct him. 1 cubic meter of seawater weighs 1,025 kilograms. That's a ton, a literal ton. You look at the missing stone block. If a wave hit this cliff, you calculate. It wasn't a splash. It was a collision. It was like being hit by a freight train made of liquid concrete. Researchers still argue about the specific mechanics of the Flannan wave. Was it a single giant wave? Or was it the three sisters? 3 massive waves in quick succession. If it was the three sisters, the timeline becomes even more horrific. Wave 1 hits. It knocks the box loose. It bends the rail. MacArthur, down on the landing, is soaked, battered, but alive. He clings to the rock. Wave 2 hits. It drags him toward the edge. He screams. Ducat and Marshall arrive. They run down the stairs to help him. They see him clinging to the twisted iron. They reach for him. And then Wave 3 arrives. The big one. The Terminator. It swallows them all. It slams them against the cliff face with enough force to shatter every bone in their bodies before dragging them down into the deep. Hydraulic pressure, you say. 6,000 pounds per square foot. Stop with the numbers, Mòr says. He looks sick. The numbers are the only thing that makes sense. You shout. Don't you see? If it's numbers, it's not evil. It's just math. Math can't hate you. But you're wrong. Math can hate you. Probability can hate you. If you are standing in the one spot on Earth where the vectors converge, the math hates you very much indeed. There is a joke physicists tell. Thermodynamics is a depressing subject. The first law says you can't win. The second law says you can't break even. The third law says you can't get out of the game. Ducat, Marshall, and MacArthur couldn't get out of the game. You look at the shape of the inlet again. The geode. It narrows as it goes in. It's a cannon, you realize. A hydraulic cannon. When a wave enters a narrowing channel, the energy has nowhere to go but up. It compresses, it accelerates. The water doesn't just rise, it explodes upward. So maybe they weren't even on the landing. Maybe they were higher up. Maybe they thought they were safe. They could have been standing right here, you say, pointing to a spot 150 feet up, watching the spray, laughing. And then the cannon fired. A jet of water, solid as a piston, shot up the ravine and picked them off the cliff like lint off a jacket. It explains the oilskins, Mòr says slowly. If they were up high, they wouldn't have needed full gear. They thought they were just watching. Exactly, you say. They weren't working. They were spectating. They were admiring the power of nature. And nature decided to give them a closer look. It's a humbling thought. It turns their death from a tragedy of duty into a tragedy of curiosity. They died because they wanted to see the show. You walk closer to the edge. The wind pulls at you. Be careful, Mòr warns. I'm fine, you say. You look down into the foam. You try to see the bodies. But the ocean is opaque. It's a chaotic mess of white and green. There is a theory called the disappearance of mass. When a human body falls into a turbulent sea, the gases in the gut compress. The body sinks. It doesn't float for days like in a calm lake. It goes down and it stays down. And down there, the crabs are waiting. They are part of the geology now, you say. They are part of the sediment. That's a comforting thought, Mòr says sarcastically. Is it? You ask. To be recycled, to become part of the rock you hated. Better than being a ghost, he says. Is it? You think about the force required to bend that rail. You touch it again. The iron is cold. It feels like dead skin. If a wave did this, then the ocean isn't just a place. It's a weapon. It's a hammer that never stops swinging. We should go back, Mòr says. The relief boat will be back soon. We need to be ready. Ready for what? To tell them we found nothing. To tell them we found the truth, Mòr says. The sea took them. End of story. He wants it to be the end of the story. He wants to close the book. But you know that the sea took them isn't an ending. It's a question mark. Because if the sea can reach up 110 feet to take 3 experienced men, then no one is safe. Not on a ship. Not on an island. Not even on the mainland, really. If the water wants you, it will find a way. There is a joke among hydrologists. If there's magic on this planet, it is contained in water. It's a quote from Lauren Isley. But on Eilean Mòr, the magic isn't the sparkly kind. It's the dark, crushing kind. As you turn to leave the landing, a spray of water hits you in the face. It's freezing. It stings. You wipe it away. You taste the salt. We are mostly water, you think. 70% water. Maybe the ocean just wanted its property back. You climb the stairs. Your legs burn. The physics of the climb is exhausting. Force times distance equals work. But the work of surviving this island is harder. It's mental work. It's the work of keeping your reality from fracturing under the pressure of the impossible. You reach the top. You look back at the sea one last time. It looks calm now, deceptively calm. It looks like it's sleeping. But you know it's not sleeping, it's digesting. And as you walk back to the lighthouse, you realize that the scariest thing about the rogue wave theory isn't the size of the wave. It's the randomness. It wasn't a punishment. It wasn't a conspiracy. It wasn't a ghost. It was just bad luck. 3 men stood in the wrong place at the wrong time, and the universe rolled a die and came up with snake eyes. That is the ultimate horror. Meaninglessness. You can be good, you can be skilled, you can be prepared, and you can still be erased by a splash of water because the wind blew a certain way in Greenland 3 days ago. It's just math, you whisper again, but it's the kind of math that subtracts you from the equation. But even as you cling to the cold comfort of the rogue wave theory, your brain revolts. It's too neat. It's too impersonal. You can quantify the water, but you can't quantify the men. And the more you stare at the white tower, the more you realize that the disaster didn't begin when the wave hit. It began years ago, in the lives these men lived before they ever set foot on the rock. You follow Mòr back into the cottage. The air inside is still stale, still smelling of old smoke and nervous sweat. You find yourself drawn back to the bedrooms, to the personal effects that were left behind. You need to know who they were. You need to flesh out the ghosts, because everyone brings their own ghosts to the island. Eilean Mòr just gives them a place to manifest. Let's start with James Ducat, the principal keeper. You pick up a framed photograph from the bedside table. It shows a stern-faced woman and 4 children, Ducat's family. He was 43 years old, a career man, 22 years in the service. Think about the weight of that. 22 years of staring at the horizon, 22 years of missing birthdays, anniversaries, Christmases. There is a mainstream historical fact that adds a layer of tragic irony to Ducat's story. He had recently complained about the station. He said it was not a place for a family man. He had applied for a transfer to a shore station. He wanted to go home. This was supposed to be one of his last shifts. He was tired, you say to Mòr, showing him the photo. We're all tired, Mòr grunts. No, I mean soul tired. He was done. He had 4 kids depending on him. Can you imagine the pressure? Every storm, every gale. He wasn't just worried about the light. He was worried that if he died, they starved. In 1900, there was no life insurance for lighthouse keepers, no widow's pension worth speaking of. If Ducat went into the water, his family went into the poorhouse. That kind of fear creates a specific vibration in a man, a hum of anxiety that never stops. Maybe that's why he was irritable. It wasn't the mercury. It was the crushing weight of being the sole provider in a job that tried to kill you every day. You look at his logbook handwriting again. It's precise, controlled. But if you look closely at the loops of the I's and the G's, you can see the tremor, the hand of a man holding on too tight. He was afraid of failing them, you whisper, and in the end, by trying to save the gear, by trying to save his job, he lost everything. Then there is Thomas Marshall, the second assistant. You move to the next bed. Marshall's space is neater, almost military. He was 28, single, the hard man of the group. But look closer. You find a letter half-written, tucked into a book. It's addressed to a woman, not a wife, a sweetheart, a mother. My dearest, it starts. The wind is very loud tonight. I find myself thinking of the garden. A garden. Marshall, the brute who would punch a shark, was dreaming of flowers. There is a psychological concept called the mask of masculinity, especially in the Victorian era. Men were not allowed to be afraid. They were not allowed to be soft. Marshall had to be the rock, but inside the rock there was a gardener screaming to get out. Why did he cry? You ask again. Maybe he wasn't crying about the storm, Mòr suggests, looking at the letter. Maybe he was crying because he realized he was never going to see that garden. There is a fringe tidbit about Marshall that the official reports gloss over. Before coming to the Flannan Isles, he had served on a station where a keeper had died. He had seen death up close. He knew what a body looked like after a week in the water. Maybe he didn't cry from fear of the storm. Maybe he cried from recognition. Maybe the sound of the wind reminded him of something he had tried very hard to forget. PTSD wasn't a term in 1900. They called it nerves or lack of moral fiber. But Marshall was carrying a trauma. He was a cracked vessel, and Eilean Mòr applied the pressure until the crack split wide open. He was the strongest, Mòr says, physically. Physical strength means nothing here, you say. The ocean can break a stone. It doesn't care how many push-ups you can do. And finally, Donald MacArthur. The occasional. His bed is the messiest. His kit bag is open, spilling clothes. He was the chaotic element. MacArthur wasn't a career keeper. He was a local man from Uig on the Isle of Lewis. He was a cooper, a barrel maker by trade. He was only here because the regular keeper, William Ross, was sick. He was the temp, the outsider. Scholars still debate the dynamic between MacArthur and the others. To Ducat and Marshall, the professionals, MacArthur might have been seen as a liability, a peasant, a superstition-ridden local who didn't know the scientific names for the clouds but knew exactly which fairies lived in which crack in the rock. They looked down on him, you guess. Maybe, Mòr admits, Ducat liked things done by the book. MacArthur, he improvised. Improvisation is dangerous in a machine. But MacArthur brought something else to the island. He brought the lore. He brought the fear of the phantom. He brought the knowledge that this place was not meant for men. Imagine the nights. Ducat trying to talk about oil pressure. MacArthur talking about the slaw. "Stop it, Donald," Ducat would snap. "That's nonsense." "Is it?" MacArthur would say, packing his pipe. "Then why do the birds scream like that?" He was the infection. He was the carrier of the fear virus. He planted the seed in their minds that the storm wasn't natural. And once that seed took root, even the rational Ducat couldn't tear it out. He was the quiet one, Mòr says. The quiet ones are the worst, you say. They listen, they absorb, and when they explode, they take everyone with them. A man of the rocks. Maybe he felt the island speaking to him in a way the city boys couldn't understand. Maybe he didn't run from the wave. Maybe he ran to it. You look at the 3 beds, 3 lives, 3 intricate webs of hope, fear, debt, and love, all severed in a single instant. It wasn't just a wave, you realize. It was a collision of histories. Ducat's anxiety, Marshall's trauma, MacArthur's superstition. They were a chemical equation. You put those 3 specific compounds in a sealed test tube, you apply heat, the storm, and you shake it. Boom. The explosion was inevitable. The wave was just the trigger. You sit on MacArthur's bed. It smells of tobacco and unwashed wool. It smells of a man who was just here. You realize that the scariest thing isn't the supernatural entity. It's the human baggage. You can't escape your past. You can't outrun your debts. You can't hide from your own mind. You look at Mòr. What did you leave behind, Joseph? Mòr jumps. What? We all leave something. A girl, a debt, a crime. Mòr looks away. I have a mother. She's sick. And you're here, you say, worrying about her, wondering if she'll be dead when you get back. Mòr nods, his eyes shiny. See, you say, the ghosts are already here. We brought them. You check your pocket watch. It's getting late in the day. The relief boat, the Hesperus, is gone. It left hours ago to return to Lewis, promising to come back with a permanent crew. But for now, for tonight, it is just you and Mòr. You are the keepers now, and you are realizing that you have inherited more than just a lighthouse. You have inherited the ghosts of Ducat's children, Marshall's garden, and MacArthur's demons. We have to light the lamp, Mòr says, his voice hollow. It's time. Yes, you say, the routine. The routine that saves you from thinking. You stand up, you leave the bedroom. You leave the photos and the letters. You leave the evidence of the lives that were interrupted. But as you walk up the spiral stairs to the lantern room, you can't help but wonder, when Ducat climbed these stairs for the last time, was he thinking about the light? Or was he thinking about his wife's face and how he had promised her this was the last time? There is a final, cruel irony to the story. William Ross, the sick keeper whom MacArthur replaced, he survived. He lived for years. He died in his bed. MacArthur died for a shift that wasn't even his. Fate has a twisted sense of humor, you mutter as you reach the gallery. What? Mòr asks, checking the oil pressure. Nothing, you say. Just watch your step. You look out at the darkening sea. The waves are black now. The foam is white. It looks like a negative photograph of the world. And somewhere down there, rolling in the deep, is a photograph of a woman and 4 children slowly disintegrating into pulp. The sea takes everything. It takes the men, it takes the gear, it takes the memories, but it leaves the questions. It always leaves the questions. You turn the valve. The gas hisses. You strike the match. Whoosh! The light flares to life. The great eye opens, and the night begins. The night watch is supposed to be boring. That is the point. You sit in a chair, you watch a flame, you check a gauge. It is the definition of monotony. But tonight, monotony feels like a luxury you cannot afford. Tonight, the routine feels less like a job and more like a seance. You are sitting in the lantern room, 200 feet above the Atlantic. The temperature here is a contradiction. Near the central burner, the heat is intense, smelling of hot brass and paraffin oil. But near the glass walls, the cold radiates inward, a physical pressure that makes your breath mist. You are trapped between an oven and a freezer. Mòr is gone. He's downstairs, supposedly sleeping, though you doubt he's doing much more than staring at the ceiling and praying the roof holds. You are alone. And you are jumpy. Let's be honest. You are terrified. Every sound is amplified. The wind howls around the lantern gallery, a high, shrieky sound that vibrates the glass panes. There is an obscure, technical reason for this. The vents in these 19th century lanterns were designed to create an updraft for the flame, but when the wind hits them at a certain angle, usually from the west, they create a harmonic resonance. It's called the banshee wail. You know it's just aerodynamics. You know it's just air moving over metal. But your lizard brain hears a woman screaming, "Wee!" The beam of the light cuts through the night like a solid bar of milk. It rotates. Flash, dark, flash, dark. Every time it flashes, it illuminates a slice of the ocean. You see whitecaps. You see rain. And then, for a split second, you see movement. Birds. Thousands of them. This is a mainstream biological fact about lighthouses that people forget. They are bird magnets. Migrating birds are drawn to the light. They get confused. They circle the tower in vast, squawking clouds. And then they hit. Thump. A starling hits the glass. Thump. Thump. A gannet. A puffin. They hit with sickening force. They break their necks. They slide down the glass, leaving smears of blood and feathers. It sounds like a fist pounding on the window. Knock, 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 knock. Come in, you mutter hysterically. The mutton is cold, but the company is charming. You try to ignore it. You try to focus on the lens. The Fresnel lens is a masterpiece of optics, prisms and bullseyes arranged to magnify a tiny flame into 1,000,000 candle power. It's hypnotic, Researchers have studied this, the lighthouse eye phenomenon. Staring at the rotating beams for too long can induce a trance state. It can cause vertigo. It can cause you to see things that aren't there. You look away from the light. You look at the dark corner of the room. Is there someone standing there? No. Just a shadow thrown by the oil tank. But the story of the fourth man creeps into your mind. Years after the disappearance, other keepers on the Flannan Isles reported seeing a figure on the balcony. A man in old-fashioned oilskins who would stand there looking out to sea and then vanish when spoken to. "Is that you, Ducat?" you ask the shadow, coming to check my work. The shadow doesn't answer, but the wind does. Woo! I'll take that as a yes. You check the oil pressure gauge, it's steady. The clockwork mechanism that turns the lens is ticking rhythmically. It sounds like a heartbeat. A slow, mechanical heart. Click-clack, click-clack. You realize that you are now part of the machine. You are the biological component necessary to keep the gears turning. And then you remember the mercury, the bath, the lens floats in. You look down at the base of the optic. Is it leaking? Can you smell it? There is no smell. Mercury is odorless. That's the joke. It kills you without ever announcing itself. Am I going mad? You wonder. Is this what it felt like for them? You imagine Marshall standing here, tears streaming down his face, while the birds thumped against the glass and the wind screamed like a banshee. Did he see the fourth man? Did he see the dark ship in the water? Or did he just see the futility of it all? You decide to make yourself a cup of tea. There is a small spirit stove in the corner for the watchman. You light it. The blue flame hisses. You pour the water. You wait. There is a joke keepers tell. The tea on a lighthouse tastes like paraffin and regret. You take a sip. It tastes like paraffin. You're still waiting on the regret. As you drink, you look down through the floor grating. You can see the spiral stairs winding down into the blackness of the tower. It looks like a throat. If you fell, you would fall for a long time. Don't fall, you tell yourself. Hold the rail. You think about the twisted rail on the west landing, the iron bent like licorice. What if the thing that bent the rail didn't come from the sea? What if it came from the sky? No, that's stupid. That's aliens. Stick to the classics, ghosts and waves. You look back out the window. The beam swings around again. Flash. And this time, you see something that makes you drop your cup. The tea splashes on your boots, burning your toes, but you don't feel it. There, on the gallery outside, a hand. A hand gripping the railing. It's white, wet. The fingers are splayed. You freeze. Your heart stops. The banshee wail seems to cut out, replaced by the rushing of blood in your ears. Someone is climbing the tower. Is it Mòr? Is he sleepwalking? No. Mòr is inside. This hand is outside, 200 feet up, in a gale. You stare at it. You wait for a face to appear. A face eaten by crabs. A face with seaweed for hair. The hand slips. It slides off the rail. Gone. You blink. You rush to the glass. You press your face against the cold pane. Nothing. Just the rain. Just the dark. It was a bird, you say aloud. A wing. A trick of the light. But it looked like fingers. It looked like knuckles. You back away from the glass. You retreat to the center of the room, near the heat of the lamp. You are shaking. Just a bird, you repeat. Just a big, white, five-fingered bird. You check your watch. 2000 a.m. Only 4 hours left until dawn. 4 hours of this. You realize why the shift system exists. No man can do this for too long without cracking. The isolation amplifies your inner monologue until it becomes an outer dialogue. You start talking to the tea. You start bargaining with the shadows. If you leave me alone, you tell the room, I'll polish the brass extra hard tomorrow. The wind laughs. Hee 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 hee! You sit back down in the watch chair. You grip the arms. You think about the sheep outside, the ones that never sleep. Are they looking up at the light right now? Are they watching you? There is a joke about sheep. What do you call a sheep with no legs? A cloud. What do you call a lighthouse keeper with no mind? A statistic. You force yourself to breathe. In. Out. You focus on the job. Maintain the light. That is the only rule. The light must burn. As long as the light burns, the ships are safe. As long as the light burns, you are safe. But then a terrible thought occurs to you. What if the light attracts them, not the birds? The others, the things from the deep. What if the lighthouse isn't a warning? What if it's a lure? Like an anglerfish dangling a light in the dark to attract prey. You are sitting inside the lure. You are the bait. Stop it, you say. You are a rational man. You believe in science. You believe in steam engines and the gold standard. But on Eilean Mòr, the gold standard doesn't apply. The currency here is fear, and inflation is skyrocketing. You hear a noise from downstairs, a creak, a footstep. Is Mòr awake? Or is it the door, the unlocked door? Did the wind blow it open? Or did something turn the handle? You listen. Creak. It sounds like someone walking up the spiral stairs. Slow. Heavy. Wet. Squelch. Step. Squelch. Step. You look at the trap door in the floor. You hold your breath. Mòr! You call out. Your voice is a squeak. No answer. Just the squelch. You grab a heavy brass wrench from the tool bench. It's iron technically, but coated in brass. Does that count as breaking the taboo? You don't care. You want a weapon. You stand over the trap door. You raise the wrench. The footsteps get closer. They are almost at the top. You brace yourself. You are ready to fight the ghost of Donald MacArthur. You are ready to bash his skull in again if you have to. A head pops up through the hole. You scream. You swing the wrench. Whoa, Mòr yells, ducking. It's me. It's me. You stop the wrench inches from his head. Mòr stares at you, eyes wide. He's holding a mug of cocoa. I brought you a drink, he stammers. I couldn't sleep. You lower the wrench. You are shaking so hard your teeth rattle. You idiot, you gasp. You nearly died. I heard you talking, Mòr says. I thought you were talking to someone. I was, you say. I was talking to the bird. Mòr climbs up into the room. He looks at the wrench. He looks at the window. Did you see something? He asks quietly. No, you lie. Nothing. You take the cocoa. It's warm. It tastes like chocolate and safety. Stay up here with me, you say, just for a bit. Okay, Mòr says. He sits on a crate. You drink the cocoa. You watch the light turn. You don't tell him about the hand. You don't tell him about the squelching sound, because if you tell him, it becomes real. But as you sit there, two men huddled under the great glass eye, you know the truth. The squelch wasn't Mòr. Mòr was wearing wool socks. The footsteps you heard were boots, wet, heavy sea boots. And Mòr came up after the footsteps stopped. So where did the walker go? You look around the room. There is nowhere to hide, unless he's standing right behind you. You don't turn around. You just drink your cocoa, and you pray for the sun. Because the night is long, and the lighthouse is full, and you are starting to suspect that the only way off this rock is to become part of the story. The sun comes up. It doesn't burst over the horizon like a choir of angels. It just sort of bleeds into the sky, a bruise turning yellow. But it's light, and light means you survived. You stand on the gallery of the lighthouse watching the dawn. The wind has finally died down to a whisper. The sea is calm, rolling with a gentle, rhythmic swell that looks innocent, almost apologetic. It's hard to believe this is the same ocean that bent iron railings and swallowed 3 men whole. Mòr is down in the kitchen packing his bag. The Hesperus will be back soon with the permanent relief crew. You are leaving. You should feel relief. You should feel the weight lifting off your shoulders. But you don't. You feel heavy. You feel like you are leaving a part of yourself behind, stuck in the masonry like the twisted iron. We're done, Mòr calls up from the courtyard. Boats on the horizon. You look out. Sure enough, a smudge of smoke. The tender. Civilization coming to reclaim you. You take one last look around the lantern room. The brass shines. The lens is clean. You did your job. The light burned through the night. The ships pass safely. But as you descend the spiral stairs, the clank-clank of your boots echoing in the stone throat of the tower, you know the truth. The mystery hasn't been solved. It has just been filed away. The official report will come out in a few weeks. It will be sensible. It will blame the weather. It will say that Ducat and Marshall went down to secure the gear, MacArthur followed, and a freak wave took them all. It's a clean narrative. It fits on a form, but it doesn't fit the feeling in your gut. It doesn't explain the crying. It doesn't explain the unlocked gate. It doesn't explain the footsteps on the stairs that stopped just before Mòr appeared. Researchers still argue about the Flannan Isles mystery today, over 100 years later. It has become the Mary Celeste of the Lighthouse service. There are books, documentaries, even an opera. People want an answer. They want to know if it was murder, madness, or monsters. But the real answer is the one nobody wants to hear. We don't know. And we never will. That is the true horror. The lack of closure. The universe is a messy place, and sometimes people just vanish. They slip through the cracks in reality, leaving behind nothing but cold mutton and questions. You walk out into the courtyard. The air smells of salt and wet grass. You pass the chapel ruins. You pass the spot where you saw the boot print. It's gone now, washed away by the night's rain. The island cleanses itself. It resets the stage for the next act. There is a famous poem by Wilfred Wilson Gibson, written in 1912, simply titled Flannan Isles. It captures the eerie stillness of the discovery better than any report. We seemed to stand for an endless while, though still no word was said, those 3 men alive on Flannan Isles who thought on 3 men dead. You are one of those men alive. But as you step onto the boat, maneuvering the jump with the practice of a survivor, you feel less alive than you did when you arrived. You feel hollowed out. The boat pushes off. The oars dip into the water. Splash, splash. You look back at the island. It rises out of the water, a gray sentinel. The lighthouse stands tall, a white finger pointing at the sky, accusing God of negligence. Glad to be off. The seaman asks you, spitting over the side. Yes, you say, very. But it's a lie. A part of you is still up there. A part of you is standing in the kitchen staring at the empty chair. A part of you is waiting for the door to open. There is an obscure, fringe fact about the lighthouse that haunts you as the distance grows. Even after automation in 1971, when the last keepers left for good, the locals say the light sometimes changes. They say that on the anniversary of the disappearance, the timing of the flash goes off, just for a few seconds, as if someone inexperienced is handling the controls, or as if someone is trying to send a message. Flash, flash, help. Don't look back, Mòr says. He's facing forward, toward the ship, toward home. He refuses to look at the rock. He's smart. You try to turn away. You try to focus on the hot meal waiting for you on the Hesperus, but you can't help it. You look, and there, on the gallery railing, 200 feet up, do you see it? A speck, a figure. It's too far to be sure. It could be a bird. It could be a shadow, but it looks like a man in yellow oilskins waving, not waving for help, waving goodbye. Goodbye, Donald, you whisper. Goodbye, Thomas. Goodbye, James. You turn your back on Eilean Mòr. The boat rocks you gently. The rhythm of the sea takes over. Up, down, up, down. You are tired, so incredibly tired. The adrenaline has faded, leaving behind a deep, narcotic exhaustion. Your eyelids feel heavy. The sound of the water is a lullaby. Hush, hush, hush. You close your eyes. The image of the lighthouse burns on the back of your retinas, a white line in the dark. You realize that you will never really leave. You will always be on the boat, rowing away, while the 3 men watch you from the gallery. There is a final joke, a dark one, that the old keepers used to tell to the new recruits. The light is a jealous mistress. She doesn't like to share. And she never lets you go. You drift. The cold is fading now, replaced by the warmth of sleep. The boat is a cradle. The ocean is a mother. A mother who sometimes eats her children, yes, but a mother nonetheless. Let go of the logic. Let go of the timelines. Let go of the need to know. They are gone. That is the only fact. The rest is just stories we tell ourselves to keep the dark at bay. The mystery of the Flannan Isles isn't about what happened. It's about what remains. The silence, the wind, the rock, and the light. Always the light. Turning, watching, waiting. Flash, you are safe. Flash, you are warm. Flash, you are asleep. Good night.